Mortem would like to thank Original Cinematic for sponsoring this week's episode. Original Cinematic is an independent production company that has made it their mission to create, produce, and promote films that are inclusive, honor women, promote the LGBTQIA+ community, and provide prominent positions and roles to POC actors and filmmakers, and promote the films of marginalized and underrepresented populations. These are all things that are extremely important to our podcast as well.
Original Cinematic is currently accepting scripts and treatments. Both William and Xxena Rush are also available via email or Zoom to discuss writing and provide input and resources to all aspiring writers free of charge. Their information will be made available in the show notes. There may be delays due to a hectic schedule and all projects being read on a first-come, first-served basis, but everything will be read and responded to. William Rush has individually produced numerous projects, including Pack is Here, Before, The Cottage, The Winemaker, and Day by Day. Their multi-award-winning film Group premiered and was celebrated at multiple film festivals as well as screenings, both in person and via Zoom, that were graciously made available to us and our patrons.
Original Cinematic has many exciting projects on the horizon. Their next film, Immersion, has been completed. The award-winning Sweetener is in development. Fetish begins shooting in September, and Encore will begin next spring. Their documentary, Women in Conversation, is slated for a September release, and we're looking forward to each and every one of them. It is truly an honor to partner with Original Cinematic, and we can't thank them enough for their contribution to our show. And now, back to our regularly scheduled program.
Salutations! Welcome to Pod Mortem. I'm Travis Hunter, joined as always by my co-hosts, my sister, and my brother-in-law.
Hi, I'm Reneé Hunter Vasquez.
Hi, I'm John Paul Vasquez.
This week, we're broadcasting live from Weston Hills Psychiatric Hospital, discussing the 1987 supernatural slasher film, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. This film was directed by Chuck Russell, from a screenplay by Russell, Wes Craven, Bruce Wagner, and Frank Darabont. Released 2 years after the previous entry in the series, Dream Warriors returns the franchise back to its roots, while also expanding upon the lore and further establishing the character of Freddy Krueger. With signature kills and memorable one-liners, indelible sequences of terror, imaginatively nightmarish set pieces and special effects, a brilliant score, and a cast of both fresh and familiar faces portraying relatable characters, this film would become a hit with audiences and critics alike, and is widely considered a fan-favorite entry of the franchise. This film was suggested to us by friends of the show, Wesley Wyatt, Heather Dempsey, Blaine Hancock, Eggy, Smelly Poo Poo Head, Donna Eason, Pancake the Panda, Jasmine, Dana Christine, Beth Bauer, Sam Pegg, Murder Stina, Cookie, Topher Williams, Brandy Hoffmeister, Scott Troutman-Wise, Itzy M, and Erica Thompson. We want to thank each and every one of them for their continued support of the show, as well as this suggestion. So, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. What were your first impressions on the film?
I remember watching this when I was young and really being blown away. I was like, oh my God, it's fucking Freddy and he's wild and whatever. And because this is this Freddy is a little more, you know what I mean? He's there.
Mm-hmm.
But I really, really like this. This is really good. He's in full blown villain mode here. And I do like it. There was a lot I forgot too, but man, this movie is fun. It's really, really fun, and I really enjoyed watching it. And I'm glad too that it's been that long since I've seen it, because I haven't seen it since I was a young teen. And watching it again, and then seeing all the stuff that I forgot, I was like, this is pretty fucking fun. This is funny as shit. But there is a couple silly things. But I mean, it's Freddy. What's a Freddy movie without it?
Yeah, no, Freddy and Silly kind of go hand in hand, especially in this one. He's kind of showing his whole ass, and
Yeah.
I'm here for it. I don't even remember the first time or how long it's been since I've seen this, but I did remember bits and pieces of it that definitely stuck with me. And then obviously there's an iconic line in this that for me, I hear Dream Warriors, I think of that line. But no, it was a lot of fun. There were some moments, like you said, that are just like I laughed out loud because it's like unintentionally funny. There are other moments that are like gravely serious, and then it's just like, no, let's keep going. It's like, oh, okay. But no, the tone is different. I think that 2 was something of a departure. We all enjoyed it, but it was different than 1.
Yeah.
1, I think, leaned more on how scary Freddy is.
Yeah.
This one, he's really having the time of his life.
Yeah.
I like the characters. Obviously, we're going to get into it later, but the roles that they play, them kind of being underdogs and stuff. I like the story that's being told, and the practical effects are on fucking point. This one is just it, except for the stuff where it was like, oh my God, like, God damn, you just dropped this on us, and then you're, whatever. It's just fun. It's a lot of fun.
No, I really enjoyed this film. I also struggled to think of the first time I saw it, and I realized I don't think I've ever watched this whole film before.
Okay.
And I think that it might be one of those films that these sequences from it because of pop culture.
Yeah.
And just simply by virtue of being a fan of the horror genre.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, you know when Freddy says this.
Yeah.
But I did know going in that Jules loves this one a lot.
Yeah.
And this one also comes so highly requested. And so I was really, really excited, especially with the reputation it has as either being the second best film in the franchise after the original, or to some people, the best film in the franchise.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was really, really excited to get into it. And I really, really loved it
Yeah, man.
for like a lot of reasons.
Okay.
I think that for the amount of things that we did enjoy about A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, I think that the biggest strength of this film is this return to dreams.
Yeah.
Yes.
I missed these dreams. I missed the surrealism, the absurdity, the just no rules, really.
Yeah.
And I know in 2 they had some sequences that were maybe starting as dreams, but they didn't really lean as heavily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that in the first film, where it is this thing where it is this completely different world where things are happening, and you kind of just have to roll with the punches a little bit.
Yeah.
And just live by this boogeyman's rules. This film, I will say, he gets a little too personal.
Yeah. Well.
Way too personal.
But I am fascinated by that. Instead of just being like this cookie cutter, this is nightmarish.
Right.
Yeah.
These are your nightmares.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, because I was saying how much scarier he is in the first one. That is scarier.
Yeah.
That this is like tailor-made for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I know how to trick this kid.
Yeah, no.
But it's wild. And I think that it really does. This, I will say this. First film, he's definitely the scarier Freddy.
Yeah.
This film, I feel like he is the more evil Freddy.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's like John Paul was like, he is in full villain mode.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of got it, because I agree. I think the first one, he is the boogeyman. He is what you're afraid of to go to bed or even doze off because your closet's open and then whatever. But here he is just like, I'm Freddy, bitch. And it's like, all right.
Yeah. It's like,
well,
oh, he's here.
Yeah. And it just feels so targeted too.
It is.
But no, I really appreciate that. Something else Jules and I talked about is this feeling of camaraderie between a group of misfits.
Yes.
That is such an intriguing dynamic that feels so comfortable to watch. We like it in It.
Yeah.
We like it even in movies like The Breakfast Club.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Like, it just works. And to see this group, as you had said, kind of band together and become what they need to become to face what is against them.
Yeah.
It's a very empowering and very, in its own way, uplifting trope.
Yeah.
And I don't think it happens enough. I think that a lot of times it's really focusing on a final girl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, well, let's kill all her friends and then see what she's got. but this I appreciate a lot.
Yeah.
But something else that I really thought about whenever I was watching this, and especially when it was over, and we'll talk obviously about everything, but for me, it felt like a fitting ending to this story.
Like an end?
I feel like if they wanted to,
Yeah.
it could have ended here.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if I would have I would have wanted more later, but I do agree. If they would have ended it here and that would have been it, it'd have been like, all right, well,
that's the
that's
end.
fine.
Yeah.
Darn, that's the end.
Yeah.
You set up this story so well in the first one, and I mean, the ending of the first one had a pretty ridiculous ending. And so this feels very, very proper and thorough.
Right.
To where we don't, and it does what you are told to do when it comes to a trilogy. If you listen to Randy Meeks, it does go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
And it does kind of give you this lore, this thing that you never knew, and elaborate on this character of Freddy Krueger. It's a very interesting story to tell.
Yeah.
I will say, and there are varied opinions.
Yeah.
Understandably. But I think that this is just such a well-rounded sequel and kind of exactly what a sequel should do.
Yeah.
And I feel like it really is not only respectful of what came before, but very, very interestingly tying in these new things. And what it does for the character of Nancy Thompson.
Yeah.
I think it makes her even more than the first one did, as far as this likable and relatable character that you can really root for and identify with.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I do think this is probably one that I am going to return to fairly often. And I think that I might even watch it 1 and 3 as like a 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I did want to talk a little bit about the production and how this film came to be. I got a lot of this information from the documentary Never Sleep Again, a few articles in Fangoria, and a live Q&A with Chuck Russell that I saw on Shock Till You Drop. So it was stated that after the financial success, but the somewhat tepid critical reception and fan reaction to A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, that New Line Cinema were looking for ways to continue the franchise, but to do so in a way that would be satisfying for audiences.
Okay.
More of what they hoped for or expected going into 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, firstly, sidebar, we covered A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 on episode 173. I think we all agree that it was not what people made it out to be.
No.
Yeah.
It was actually a lot of fun and a pretty good film.
Yeah.
And justice for Mark Patton.
Yes.
But Bob Shea and Sarah Risher over at New Line Cinema, they kind of discussed these ideas of bringing back Wes Craven to see what he could bring to the table as far as ideas were concerned.
Okay.
Risher actually said that throughout the course of the franchise, she would often call him and see if he was interested in returning on almost every sequel. And it just so happened on 3, he was.
Hell yeah.
So Craven wrote the original screenplay for Dream Warriors with Bruce Wagner, and he loved it. And the producers enjoyed a lot of elements from it, but they felt that it didn't quite work completely. They applauded the ambition of the writing, but there was what they considered to be a lack of rules, character, and emotion.
Okay.
And so one thing I did want to point out as well is that I did read a few articles in Bloody Disgusting where they had talked about 2 other people who wrote treatments for a potential either prequel or possibly what Dream Warriors could have been. One of those people was Robert Englund.
Really?
Yeah, and he had written a story following the sister of Tina from the original film, kind of discovering the story of what happened to her sister. And it all starts with like microfiche and like research teams.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah, and I think it was called like Freddy's...
Microfiche.
No. I think it was called Freddy's Funhouse or Freddy's Playhouse or something. I think it was Funhouse. But it was kind of going back into the world of the Elm Street house to kind of discover what happened to her sister.
Okay.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
And the other person who wrote a treatment was John Saxon.
Oh.
And I have read excerpts through Bloody Disgusting, but they only had excerpts. And it seems mildly fishy because it was based on reading pages from a script that were listed on eBay selling the original treatment from 1987. So I don't know all that's true. It seemed a little fishy, but it was on Bloody Disgusting, and they did treat it like it was a legitimate thing.
Wow.
Okay. Well.
And his prequel would have taken place in 1969, and Freddy would have been framed for these crimes by the Manson family.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah, I don't know about that.
So that was interesting.
Oh my God.
Yeah, let's not do that.
It's very interesting.
I don't know. That was the last thing I was,
Yeah.
I was expecting you to.
All interesting ideas.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But back to Craven's screenplay. So after they kind of critiqued it and were kind of looking for ways to change it and to add these elements to it, they were actually in the middle of rewrites, New Line Cinema, with Wes Craven to kind of add these elements that they were hoping for.
Okay.
But at the same time, the producers met with a couple of up-and-coming screenwriters and directors who had a pitch for a Nightmare on Elm Street sequel. None other than Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont.
Okay.
Frankie D.
Yeah.
We love Chuck Russell.
Yes, but Frankie D.
Frankie D.
So it was producer Rachel Talalay who actually directed the 6th entry of A Nightmare on Elm Street and directed Tank Girl.
Oh.
All right.
Just as a little aside. But she was the one who was instrumental in bringing Russell and Darabont in. And it was all based on a treatment that they had written and storyboards that Chuck Russell had drawn up and his critiques of what he would have changed about A Nightmare on Elm Street 2. And so doing this and meeting with Bob Shea, it got them the gig.
Okay.
And it was actually, this film is Chuck Russell's feature directorial debut.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I never would have guessed.
Not at all. From what I understand, he was looking for the first project that he would direct and hoped to. And it just so happened that with this treatment and everything that he brought to New Line, this ended up being his first film.
All right.
Which is, again, incredibly ambitious, not only in scope as far as what this film does in so many different ways, but also the fact that you're taking this franchise,
Yeah.
taking helm of it, and you're also taking over and rewriting a screenplay written by the person who created it.
Yeah.
And so I will admit that this did, I'm not admitting anything, I wasn't there.
We weren't sure it was going to work.
We were scared, but no. There were differing opinions depending on which interviews I found.
Mm-hmm.
There were some interviews in Fangoria where Wes Craven was a little irritated by it.
Yeah.
Because he had heard that they were kind of shopping around this rewritten screenplay from Darabont and Russell without Craven and Wagner's names on it, even though they do form a giant portion of what this story is.
Yeah.
A lot of it is changed, and a lot of it, and even the producers say we give full credit for the story to them. And so it does kind of get a little tricky, and I think that there was arbitration with the WGA.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
And I did read in Fangoria that Wes Craven never once visited the set
Damn.
because of that arbitration. But he would go on, at least in the Never Sleep Again documentary, and saying, in all fairness, Darabont and Russell did great work.
I mean,
Yeah.
they do great work.
Yeah.
Historically. Well, I mean, I guess after this.
Yeah. This is the beginning of their great work.
Yeah.
But it was this kind of vibe that Craven was trying to cultivate with this screenplay that was kind of at odds with what Russell and Darabont were hoping to do. When they had read Craven's screenplay, they had said that it was kind of a little too vulgar and profane.
Damn.
And they were much more interested in exploring the imaginative aspects of the world, of lore, of dreams, and wanted to do their own thing with it while also being respectful to what came before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we look at what they did with The Blob, this is just kind of their MO.
Yeah.
I do find it funny because I don't ever hear about New Line Cinema too much, but I remember always when I would watch movies, that was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because I watched a lot of Freddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, one of the nicknames I remember seeing a lot, they called New Line Cinema the house that Freddy built.
I remember that.
Yeah.
But from what I saw in that Shock Till You Drop interview, Chuck Russell said that they only had 10 days to rewrite what Wes Craven and Wagner had written.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he had seen, and I really like this comparison, is he wanted to inject a bit more, And you do see it in the film through the dynamics of this group of characters.
Yeah.
A little bit more lightness and optimism to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he took it to where he said, he goes, if Wes Craven is John Lennon, me and Darabont were Paul McCartney. And I was like, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just think that what they did really does work. And from what they had said on the documentary, what was written seemed at least to be a $20 million script if they did everything that was there.
Damn.
And you see the budget for the film was about $4.6 million.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
And so it took a lot of really hard work, a lot of incredible technical skill and wizardry to turn what you have in those pages to what you're able to do with that budget.
Yeah.
And I think that what they did is just incredible.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But another thing that they had mentioned is that they wanted, through this screenplay, to explore the idea of child bonding and the difficulties of adolescence, which I think we all agree they do.
Yeah.
But they also wanted to balance the horror with a bit of humor, and through that, kind of give Freddy his signature snark.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He kind of becomes what we think of when we think of Freddy because of this film.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And a lot of producers in the documentary consider Dream Warriors as this instrumental film in the franchise that took Freddy Krueger from this cult figure to almost a pop culture icon.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really the start of that. And it is that injection of humor to where he does have a lot of fun,
Yeah.
a lot of one-liners, and just he is having a blast.
Yeah. Well, I can see that because I again, like we said, Freddy and Elm Street 1 is that's just scary.
Yeah.
That's just terrifying. He's like, I don't want to go to bed. I don't want to. Here, there, you know what I mean? This is the same, like you said, we get the dreams back, but there is more of a group effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like it is scary, but it's not too scary. So it's like, and he does, him showing his ass, I can see that. It's like, oh, his sweater does look like that. Oh, I can make one just like that. We can market that.
It's like that's
Is that-
it.
yeah.
Seriously. And it's funny because in an interview, Bob Shea, he's like, well, he's the hero that you love to hate. I said, hero?
Yeah. What the fuck?
Now, before we inhabit this film's dreams, we would like to issue a warning for spoilers. Pod Mortem is a very in-depth podcast, and in thoroughly discussing horror films, we have no choice but to spoil a thing or two. If you don't wish to be spoiled, please go watch the film, then come back and enjoy the show. If you've already seen the film or don't care about spoilers, let's try to stay awake. Now, this film relies heavily on having already seen A Nightmare on Elm Street. If you haven't, we suggest you go watch it, or go listen to episode 35 of our show as a refresher. Beware, this episode may contain spoilers for films in this franchise that we've covered so far. So the film begins with a quotation, bold red text against a black background. Sleep, those little slices of death, how I loathe them. Edgar Allan Poe. So this is not a quote from Poe in real life. Just
So you're lying to us right out the gate.
from the beginning.
Well, it was like his neighbor,
Oh, yeah.
Edgar Poe. Just
Oh, okay.
So this is for same first and last? That's interesting. I thought you were going to say like Roe.
no, I
No,
don't know.
it was just a different middle name.
Edgar Joe.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I went searching online and I found the Poe Museum website.
Okay.
And it was an entry they wrote on their blog, and it cites an online resource called The World of Poe, which sources the quote to a 1959 film, Journey to the Center of the Earth.
What the fuck?
And they state emphatically that Poe never wrote this. But it is way cooler to think that this quote came from Poe.
True.
Yeah.
And dreams are a little bit like a lie from your brain, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so let's just lie to each other. That's the whole thing.
But the red words of questionable origin fade away, replaced by the white text of the opening credits, accompanied by the whirling notes of an ominous organ. In blood red, with the subtitle in a glowing green, we get the title of the film, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. So I do just want to say very quickly, the score of this film is one of my favorite things about this film.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
Yeah.
It was composed by Angelo Badalamenti, who, if you recall, scored basically all of David Lynch's works.
Oh, I was like, I know we've said that name before.
Yeah.
It was the last name. When you said it, I was like, I know I've heard that.
I was shocked to see it because I didn't know they had written something about that he had worked in a few mainstream films as well as all of these art films. And this is often listed as one of the quote mainstream.
Okay.
But he did Twin Peaks. We talked Mulholland Drive, like so many films.
Yeah.
He had talked about a few things that he did with this score, and you hear it incorporate elements of the original score.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But he also added like these little motifs and little clues where each character kind of has their own little thing going on. And then there are these little teases in the music of maybe the impending arrival of Freddy.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that.
Okay.
It's just great work.
Yeah.
But as the opening credits continue, we watch as a girl's hand tears off the folded top of a bag of all-purpose flour. She dumps the contents into a bowl, mixing it to thicken the white sludge already occupying the container. After it's properly combined, she pours the mixture into a clear glass bowl, a solitary housefly tracing its edges as it settles at the bottom. The camera then pans across her workstation, finding the blades of her orange-handled scissors slicing through pages of newspaper. She dips her fingers into the bowl of homemade papier-mâché adhesive, coating a strip of newsprint in the gloppy glue before peeling it from the table and adding it to a wall of her project.
I was like, oh, it's paper mache.
Yeah.
Because I was like, did this film really start with like sinister baking? I was like, what is this? The level of drama was like on 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was a little not confused, but I was like, okay, what are we doing here? I was like, what's happening?
And then watching it, having never seen it before, I thought it was as well as you did, a cake or something.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is not what I expected.
I was like, oh, it's crafts.
Yeah.
But this is the level of drama that's happening in my head when I'm like doing a miniature or a booklet or something.
I will say and not knowing who's doing this yet either,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh, are we flashing back to like Freddy creating something fucking like weird?
Right.
Oh,
You know?
okay.
I mean, he had his own workshop and everything.
He did.
He did?
And it maybe is a little nod to the beginning of the first film where he did start at the beginning creating something.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the adhesive looked really gross on the table, and I was like, ooh, don't know what that is. But we peer through the windows of one of the walls of her project, which appear like two opened eyes, as she smooths out the paper on the other side, before we finally meet the artist herself, Kristen Parker, played by Patricia Arquette. And this is her feature film debut.
Wow.
Oh, okay. Medium, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stigmata.
Oh, there you go.
Lost Highway.
All right.
Yeah.
Back to Lynch.
Of course.
So I did want to mention something that I saw on the Never Sleep Again documentary,
Mm-hmm.
and hearing it on there conflicts with a lot of other things that I know that we have read, and so I wanted to present what they had said at first, and then we can kind of counter it.
Okay.
So what they had mentioned is they had said that on Patricia Arquette's first night of filming, it was 4 a.m., and I think it was a matter of this being her first feature film. She's the lead of the film. They had said that she kind of got a little nervous, and her lines, she kept forgetting them. And after 52 takes,
Oof.
they gave her cue cards. And according to the producers, they said that they felt that Chuck Russell never forgave her for it, really. And from that point on, never gave her the direction that she needed direction-wise for the rest of the film. That conflicts a lot with a lot of other things that we've read.
Yeah, that's not what I read at all.
No,
Yeah.
I even saw a short little interview with Patricia Arquette where she mentioned Chuck Russell very fondly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what I had read was that she was getting cold feet and she was nervous on the first night of filming.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that the producers were like, get her out of here. Like they wanted her fired immediately just off of that. And that Chuck Russell was like, no, I see something in her. There's a spark there. And he fought for her to stay. But I'm like, oh, girl, 52 days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to say.
That makes me so sad.
It is sad. And Patricia Arquette said that she had heard that it was Chuck Russell who saved her job and she thanked him for it. And so that's the story that I heard.
I'm going to go with that.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick that one.
I will say there were a lot of talks of the difficulties of this shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Heather Langenkamp said it was the most stressful shoot of her career.
Oh my God.
We'll talk about a few things that happened later on that were very difficult to do as an actor. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of time constraints. There was a lot of pressure on everyone and a lot of difficulty. I read in Fangoria of people not thinking that things were getting done as fast as they should be done.
Okay.
And to me, that feels like a producer problem.
Yeah.
That maybe bleeds down to the director and maybe makes it to where maybe he is a little short sometimes.
Yeah.
Which honestly, I mean, you understand, but you also shouldn't do.
Yeah.
But it's just, stories. What are they?
They're lies, apparently. Edgar Allan Poe taught me that.
But Kristen works diligently, lining the walls with more newspaper before trading these materials for popsicle sticks, which she darkens with a black marker. The music in the score continues its eerie ascendance as Kristen's eyes start to close and her head becomes heavy. She quickly snaps out of this momentary daze, reaching for a nearby clock to discover that it's 1:20 a.m. She switches on a radio, blasting Into the Fire by Dawkin, which drowns out the spooky sounds of the score. And we'll have more about Dawkin later. For good reason. But she snags a container of Maxwell House instant coffee, scooping up a spoonful of grounds and shoveling them into her mouth, washing it down with a sip of Diet Coke, both labels facing the camera.
Of course.
Yeah.
I was like, this motherfucker ain't joking. But this demeanor, she's already trying to stay awake. She already is well-versed in some aspect of Freddy, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. I love this kind of like, and for the audience as well, this franchise knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know what you have to do.
Yeah.
We don't need to go through this whole thing of you being like, oh, I think maybe my dreams. It's like, nah.
And I believe if she added a fireball, that's just a pretty. That's it.
But she continues her work, lining her now shadowy sticks with Elmer's glue to build a fence. But the loud music emanating from Kristen's speakers draws the ire of Elaine Parker, her mother, played by Brooke Bundy.
So Brooke Bundy, I did take a look at her IMDb, and it looks like she also did A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Masters. She also did some Star Trek, The Next Generation.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
Our dad watched the shit out of that.
Yeah. And then in 89, she did Beverly Hills Body Snatchers.
Oh my God.
Interesting.
Great year.
Yeah.
All right, here. But all dressed up in a shimmering pink gown and a black fur and jewelry, Elaine bursts into Kristen's bedroom, shutting off the radio, worried that her daughter could wake up the whole neighborhood.
Where were you? Were you at a ball? Like that fit?
Uh-huh.
Color Ranch.
Yeah.
She'd be dressing.
I think what's funny to me is that when I saw this, I assumed she's like, no, I'm going to go out right now and you don't stay up too late. She's like, I've been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did my business.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you're barely fixing to take off?
Yeah.
No. Mom's been out.
You've been gone.
Mom is cutting loose.
But Kristen offers a soft, hi, Mom. But Elaine sidesteps this greeting, asking Kristen what she's still doing up at this hour. Kristen explains that she was just waiting for her mother to get home, but Elaine announces that now she's here and Kristen can get some sleep. When Kristen just sits there for a moment, Elaine adds, come on, andale, which...
Crafting's hard work.
Yeah, it's like, Mom, leave me
hold on.
alone.
But she walks Kristen to her bed, pulling down its pink blankets for her to climb in. Kristen protests that she's not even tired, but Elaine reminds her that she knows what her shrink told her. As Kristen gets into bed, resting against her pillow, she retorts that her psychiatrist is full of it, but Elaine isn't about to be dragged into an argument and just orders her daughter to get some sleep. But just before Elaine leaves, Kristen stops her, grabbing her by the arm and telling her mother that she's still having those awful dreams. Suddenly, a man's voice is heard on the first floor, calling out to Elaine, asking her where she keeps her bourbon. Elaine leans her head into the hall to answer that she'll be right down, before returning to Kristen, telling her that she has a guest downstairs.
Mommy's really trying to get it in right
Oh,
now.
Yeah,
I get it.
right.
So if you could shut the fuck up and go to bed, it would really help a lot.
Yeah, it's like, look, you've got two options. You can listen or you
No!
can go.
Oh,
no.
Well, hey, Mom's
No.
room is down the street. That's her house. If she wanted
Down
to
the
get freaky,
street. Mom's room is
well,
down-
you know what I mean? Down the hallway.
I don't even live here. I drove all the way here to check on you, and you're...
And the song you're
I'm
like,
down the hall. You can turn your radio back on.
But when dude spoke up, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, obviously, we already said that Freddy is in full villain mode. This woman's a fucking villain.
Yeah.
She is a villain. I
She
was
is.
mad every time she was on screen.
Yeah.
But stung a bit by her mother's inattention to her worries, Kristen supposes that she doesn't want to keep the man waiting and is correct in her assumption. Elaine kisses the top of Kristen's head, bidding her good night before shutting off the light and closing the door behind her. But in the blueness of the night, Kristen listens as her mother's heels click down the stairs outside her bedroom door, and she sinks into her bed, pulling her blankets over her shoulders. She stares over at her desk, and shots alternate between her reclined posture in bed and her creation. As the camera presses in closer and the music grows lightly foreboding yet oddly whimsical, we see the house that Kristen has built bears a striking resemblance to one we've seen before. Perhaps in the 1984 horror classic A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But when we return to Kristen, we find her fast asleep in her bed, and a choir of voices overtakes the score before they're accompanied by the sing-song voice of a little girl. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. Her voice is joined by another as the song continues. 3, 4, better lock your door. A wind of unknown origin blows through Kristen's hair, a leaf tumbling from on high to rest next to her on her pillow. She lurches awake as the voices of the children continue. 5, 6, grab a crucifix. Kristen then reaches upward, and the camera follows her above her bed frame. Where once was a wall, we pull back to reveal the lawn in front of the familiar facade of a house, much like the one we just saw on Kristen's desk, standing tall in the background, abandoned with wooden planks barring the windows. Uncredited children gather on the front lawn, 2 little girls standing on either side of the walkway, skipping rope for a little boy to jump over at the center as they continue singing, 7, 8, gonna stay up late. A little girl tosses a pink ball with a little boy as the song concludes, 9, 10, never sleep again. The song begins again as Kristen crawls out of bed, confused. This little trick was so nifty with this bed frame.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love just this complete shift in environment of now we are in this dream world, this nightmare land, I guess.
Freddy's Funhouse.
Yes, there you go. I think this is really what I kind of missed so much in the second film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And I know that there were dream-ish sequences, but they just did not, it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
But Kristen surveys the children as she approaches the house in slow motion. We follow her at a low angle, peering up at her as she passes the little boy underneath the jump rope, and ominous strings accompany her steps, with the main theme from the first film played on bright bells in the score. Kristen approaches a little girl on the porch sitting on a tricycle, played by Kristen Clayton. She sits there in her yellow dress with her hands resting on the handlebars as she bids Kristen hello and asks her what her name is.
She wants to play a game.
Is that right?
Real quick, I did think it was funny because I recognized the little girl's face. And I was like, I know her grown up somewhere. But it's because she's the oldest son's girlfriend on Home Improvement.
But Kristen tells the little girl her name, and the girl only giggles when Kristen asks for her name in return. It's kind of funny that the child actor's name is also Kristen.
Yes.
That might be why she's laughing. They just left it in. But Kristen asks what this place is, and before the little girl can answer, the blood-red front door of the house creaks open with a screech. The little girl tells Kristen that she has to go now, turning around and riding her tricycle into the darkness of the house.
She's got it covered.
Yeah.
She's fine.
You don't
Yeah.
need me. You live here.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah.
Nice to meet you. But Kristen chases her inside, searching for her on the first floor and reaching the open door to the cellar. The tricycle bell sounds, echoing through the darkness, which entices Kristen to continue downstairs in search of the little girl. She passes through shadows and the clutter of the cellar before reaching the end of the room, where the little girl slowly rides her tricycle out of a dark corner.
Hello, Kristen.
I knew it. She wants to play a game.
She wants to play a game.
But she somberly tells Kristen, "This is where he takes us."
Don't dream about me no more, kid.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
I don't want nothing to do with this.
So long. You think those other kids are still jumping rope? Think I could double dutch in on that?
Go play.
But a door creaks behind Kristen, which startles her to urgency, pleading for the little girl to come with her and telling her that they're leaving. But as she reaches for the handles of the tricycle, a large furnace next to them comes alive, flames rising brightly behind the metal bars and steam belching from the back of it. Kristen peers through the bars to find skulls and human remains buried by the blaze. She screams, full of fear, as the sound of footsteps echo around her and the little girl announces, "Freddy's home." Steam hisses around them as Kristen picks up the little girl, carrying her up the stairs and out of the cellar as the music in the score grows frenzied and frantic, the camera following them through long stretching hallways as a shadow pursues them flittingly across the walls.
You guys think that she's still holding a little girl? It's so funny because when she takes off, it's clearly just straight and stiff. It made me laugh.
It's a dream.
Yeah.
But Kristen carries the little girl onward until her steps seem to become slow and labored, as if she's running in place. She looks down at her feet, only to find them caught and submerged in a thick black sludge.
Something that I love about this, and they really, to me, captured it in the first one as well, is the weird, helplessness that you feel in nightmares.
Yes.
Where you can't scream, you can't run, you punch something and it's like there's no power behind it.
Yeah.
You feel it watching this. It's like, I know exactly how that feels.
Mm-hmm.
But at a distance, wearing his signature red and green sweater, his tattered brown fedora, and the bladed fingers of his glove shimmering in the limited light, Freddy Krueger, played by Robert Englund, lurches out of the darkness.
Woo!
Yeah.
I did read something in Fangoria about Robert Englund's involvement in this film.
Mm-hmm.
The producers seem to think that Robert Englund really just wanted to do this third one as the last one to round out the trilogy.
Yeah.
And so whenever they were talking about carrying the franchise on after this, they weren't sure that Robert Englund would want to be a part of it. And so when they were still kicking around ideas for Dream Warriors, the script finally gets to him and he loves it. And he loves it so much so that his opinion changes, and it's clear that he becomes very open to doing way more than just 3.
I love that.
So just the strength of that script really spoke to him.
Yeah.
But Freddy rushes for Kristen in slow motion, his blades thirsty for blood. But just as he reaches her and goes in for the kill, Kristen is able to free herself from the tar at her feet. She continues down a long hallway of stone walls, glancing over her shoulder as she makes her way up a few steps of a small staircase. Once she reaches the top, she stumbles absently into the hanging bodies of dead teenagers, all hung by the neck. The camera pulls back to reveal, with a musical flourish punctuating the sight, that the room is filled with at least a dozen of these hanging bodies, some in their pajamas, some in street clothes, but all swaying lifelessly from the rope at their neck under the pale blue light. I really like the distinction of what they're wearing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Different frogs, different times, as Gareth said on The Office. But I just think that it's so interesting that Freddy is kind of just putting this all on display.
Yeah.
I believe these are his victims. He didn't just throw some people here.
Oh, no, yeah.
Oh, no, yeah.
Although he could if he wanted to.
That's not what this is.
No.
Stretch those numbers. But Kristen then hears the voice of the little girl crying, "Put me down. You're hurting me." She looks down at the girl in her arms, only to reveal that she's holding a withered and decayed body, whispers of the girl's long blonde hair hanging ragged from her brain as her mouth hangs open in a skeletal scream.
God damn.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about this for a moment.
Okay.
Before we move on. I read in several places, I know there was a decently long article on Screen Rant I also saw Mark Shostrom, who worked on Dream Warriors, talking about it. But this skeleton was not what was the intended scare here. He said that he went to Chuck Russell and was like, what are we thinking for this, what the little girl turns into? He said that Chuck Russell told him 2 words, think Auschwitz. That's what he said he told him. He went to the Museum of Tolerance. He did, research, and he sculpted this little girl based off of pictures that he saw of children at that concentration camp. He brings it to Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont, and they're like, absolutely not. That is too much. That's not going in our movie. He spent 10 weeks making this thing. And so he was really pushing for it, and they put their foot down and they were like, this is not going in the movie. So he said that basically at the last minute, somebody super glued a skeleton together in like 10 minutes, and that he had spent 10 weeks working on that sculpt, and they were like, it's too disturbing. But I'm like, if that was your direction, I kind of like, was that your direction? Like,
oh, as far as like if that was really,
because if he told him that, and that's exactly what he did, and he's like, oh, get out of, like, brother,
right?
I'm like, what was the disconnect? Or maybe he was like in theory, and then seeing it, he's like, oh no, absolutely
and that
not.
I'm sure can happen.
Yeah,
a lot.
Maybe everybody was right. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I was like 10 weeks, and they were like, that is not going in the movie,
and it doesn't.
No,
it doesn't. Yeah, it's the skeleton, and maybe he was exaggerating, but he did say glued together in 10 minutes. I thought it looked good. I thought it was fine.
And honestly, for this short, like not even 2-second sight gag,
Yeah.
the skeleton works perfectly.
Yeah. I was like, it's like too scary, Carl. Like we don't. Why does this theme keep coming up? I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, you can find the pictures of it online. I think it was in that Screen Rant article, and I was like, God damn, like it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's too much for this moment.
Yeah.
One thing I will say about Mark Shostrom is I keep reading this rumor, and we did mention it when we covered Evil Dead 2, I believe is episode 77. Shostrom also worked on Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
And we talked about it on that episode where we see Freddy's glove in the shed.
Right.
That's right.
And so if it's the same year that he's working on Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and he's working on Evil Dead, the rumor is that he's the one that snuck Freddy's glove into...
That's pretty cool.
I love that.
But Kristen then jolts awake in her bed, sweat shining on her face as a clock ticks incessantly in the background, and echoes of her nightmare disappear around her. After a moment, she removes her blankets, climbing out of bed and inching her way to her adjoining bathroom. Once she switches the light on and reaches the sink, the camera arcs around her as she reaches for the faucet. But suddenly, the thin white fixture of the faucet grasps her hand like gloved fingers, and the bathroom door slams behind her. Hot water bursts from the faucet, steam filling the room as Kristen screams and catches her reflection in the mirror. The sight of her slowly dims, and a vision of Freddy appears, his scarred face laughing maniacally beneath his brimmed hat. With great agony, Kristen pulls the hot water handle out from the sink, bringing the pipe beneath it with it. But the other water faucet handle, cold not only in temperature, extends its prongs, blades suddenly jutting from them sharply.
When I was reading about this film, I found an article written by Joel Fletcher, who worked on Dream Warriors, obviously. And he said that the faucet was built from scratch with Bondo, styrene plastic, and wood, and that he hid underneath it and used a monitor to watch Patricia Arquette, and he is the one that grabbed her.
Oh, wow.
Hiding underneath the sink. I thought that was really cool. And there's more stuff like that, the way that they they put these people through a lot.
Oh, yeah. They did.
This looks really good, though.
Yes.
What's happening right here,
Mhm.
I was like, I remember this happened, but watching it, I was like, damn, that's fucking terrifying.
It's the faucet that like grabs
Yeah.
her. I'm like,
It feels like almost a bit of stop motion in there.
yeah.
And you feel like it put me in the mind of like old Disney cartoons, like Mickey's Gloves.
Okay.
For sure.
Yeah.
Or like the stop motion in Basket Case.
Yeah. That's in a museum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one way to go. I guess.
Yeah.
But the handles and the pipes rise up from the sink in front of Freddy's reflection, a mimicry of his bladed glove resting in a crude claw in the cold faucet. Upon Freddy's lunging in the mirror, it strikes Kristen, her blood streaking across the mirror. But upon hearing Kristen's screams, Elaine rushes back into her daughter's room, and when she urgently opens the bathroom door, she finds Kristen standing there. Just a sidebar very quickly, there is a lot of discussion of self-harm and suicidal ideation in this film, so if that's not something that you would like to listen to right now, completely understand and protect your mental health. But Kristen holds her arms up to her mother, a horizontal wound at her right wrist and a razor blade held in the fingers of her left hand. She offers one word, Mom, before collapsing to the floor.
I was not expecting this.
Not at all.
The nightmare was terrifying on its own. The sink trying to kill me, and then, you know what I mean? It's like, what the fuck, dude? What happened?
One thing that I kept thinking was like almost a little homage to the first film.
Yeah.
And what I think of Patricia Arquette, we don't think of this being, oh, this is her first film.
Yeah.
It's like, that's Patricia Arquette. Maybe she dies in the first scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then whatever happens afterward.
Mhm.
True.
But so it was quite surprising.
Yeah.
But the next morning, the camera lingers outside the gates of Weston Hills Psychiatric Hospital, the sign etched in gold through the bars, the sprawling and towering brick of the building with its arched windows filling the shot as a pair of doctors walk toward the front entrance. From my research, from what it seems, is that this facade of the building and a little bit that we see later where they're kind of walking on the grounds,
Yeah.
it was actually filmed at UCLA.
Oh, okay.
Oh, later when they're walking outside, it does look like a college campus. Now that you
Yeah.
mentioned that.
For sure. And I think all of the interiors were part of sets that were built in this warehouse that they were located in for the majority of the shoot.
Oh, all right.
But inside the halls of the hospital, Max Daniels, an orderly played by Lawrence Fishburne, credited as Larry Fishburne, rolls his cart of medication through the halls as he listens to a news report on the radio.
That was my note, was Larry Fishburne is crazy.
Yeah.
Because I saw the name in the opening credits and I was like, no.
Yeah.
That's great.
And
Yeah.
it is.
He was young.
Yeah, he was.
He hadn't earned Lawrence.
No. Yeah. I'll get there.
Yeah.
I went from watching Hannibal with Jules, where Larry Fishburne plays Jack Crawford,
Yeah.
to this,
Yeah.
working on my script, and it was just it was such a wild thing.
Yeah.
John Paul and I were talking about him yesterday, and he's in shit that you don't even remember him being in.
No,
Yeah.
He is in so much.
That is funny because I know him as Furious Styles. He's Trey's daddy from Boys in the Hood.
Yeah.
But even on that, it's Larry Fishburne. I was
Yeah.
like, what the
Is it
hell?
really?
Yeah.
I looked back on his IMDb, and it's around the time that he played Ike Turner that he
Oh,
changed to Lawrence.
because I remember even as a kid on The Matrix, it was Lawrence.
Yeah.
But the radio announces that 2 more teenage deaths have occurred in the area, both suicides, and county health officials are at a loss to explain this alarming trend. In the hall, Max bumps into Dr. Neil Gordon, played by Craig Wasson, who sarcastically makes mention of the cheery news from the radio that they're beginning their day with. I will say very quickly, just from what you were joking about with the tricycle and that nightmare, we have a Dr. Gordon.
I'm just saying there might have been some influence. That's all I'm saying.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Saw.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Craig Wasson, real quick. I wanted to check out, his filmography because he looked familiar, but it's not who I thought it was. But he did do The Outsider in 1979, Body Double in 1984, and The Pornographer in 1999.
Oh. Well, he makes me laugh really hard later. Twice, I think.
Yeah.
But Max, however, has a theory about what they've heard on the news, and Neil casually admits his interest, considering that they need all the help they can get. But Max puts it bluntly. It's the fucked up chromosomes. All the parents of those teenagers dropping acid in the 1960s. Neil remarks that it beats the theories of a Dr. Sims, who assumes it's all related to sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But as they part company and Max continues alone down an adjacent hallway, he scoffs, commenting that that's what keeps people alive.
Amen.
I was writing the exact same joke, and then he said it, and I was like, oh, okay.
All right, well, Max is cool.
Yeah.
But Neil chuckles before turning his attention to one of his patients in the hall. Standing there in a flannel shirt, and I believe a Dawkins t-shirt underneath that shirt, is Taryn White, played by Jennifer Rubin.
So Jennifer Rubin, I did enjoy her character in this movie.
Yeah.
Me too.
So I was very interested waiting to get into her filmography. She was in The Doors in 91.
Oh, wow.
She did The Crush in 93 and
Oh.
Screamers in 95.
Huh.
And I agree with you 100%. Her character, to me, is so cool.
Yes.
But as Taryn leans against the wall, nervously chewing her fingernails, Neil tells her that she doesn't look too hot and asks if she's been getting any sleep. When Taryn just turns her weary eyes away from him, Neil just comments to himself that he didn't think so. But as he continues down the hall, he bumps into another patient, Jennifer Caulfield, played by Penelope Sudrow. He greets her warmly, and as they walk together, he asks her how her burns are. She reveals the back of her wrist from underneath her jacket, labeling the burns: regular, menthol, ultralight. He just pats her back, remarking that they're healing up nicely, and nervously, Jennifer replies that she's been good and asks when she gets her cigarette privileges back. Walking away from her, Neil, clearly a little proud of himself for the wordplay, says, "Don't hold your breath."
He's like, yeah. I ate with that one.
I'm the coolest doctor around.
He sits in his chair backwards.
But just then, Philip, played by Bradley Gregg, passes by, casually greeting Neil from beneath his shaggy hair before rushing off down the hall in the other direction. But through the window of a door in the hallway, Neil stops to check in on the patient inside. There, huddled in the corner and shrouded by shadows, sits Roland Kincaid, played by Ken Sagos.
Another very cool character.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ken Sagos. So he did Project X in 87. Then he did A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master in 88.
Interesting.
Oh.
And then he did the next big thing in 2016.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I really, really like him in this film.
Yeah.
Me too.
But as Neil makes a note on his clipboard, Dr. Elizabeth Sims, played by Priscilla Pointer, sidles up next to him, asking him how Kincaid is doing. Priscilla Pointer is probably a very familiar name. If you recall, she played Mrs. Snell in Carrie.
Did you see my head perk up?
I did. But she's also the mother of Amy Irving
Yes, that's
Okay.
right. That's right.
in real life.
Yeah.
But she was also in David Lynch's Blue Velvet, so we're bringing it back to Lynch.
Of course.
But she is... Her character is terrible in this film.
I was going to say.
I just want to point that out. But she plays her so well.
Yeah.
She does a great job, but yeah, you wanna knock her out.
Yeah.
But Neil remarks that Kincaid has been cooling down, but Sims threatens that if Kincaid continues to have outbursts like this, she'll have to have him isolated permanently. Neil assures her that it won't come to that, but as he guides her away from the window and back into the hall, he shares that he read the report on the new staff member, and Sims is curious of his thoughts. Perplexed, Neil states that he doesn't understand why some grad school superstar is being treated like a seasoned professional. But Sims points to the new staff member's groundbreaking work on pattern nightmares. Neil, however, says that they don't need any outside help. He knows these kids, and he doesn't want some hotshot taking chances with them just so she can get published.
I wonder who this could be.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I will say one thing that it does, it accomplishes a few things for Neil's character.
Yeah.
One, it may seem that he's just very territorial,
Mm-hmm.
but it shows how much he cares about these kids.
Yeah.
And I think it really reinforces it later on when we see the dynamic between him and Sims.
Yes.
where it's like, oh, you've like had to have your guard up for
Yeah.
a while.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, dude.
You know?
Yeah. But suddenly, a call on the intercom interrupts their conversation, calling them to examination, and they jog down the hall in the other direction. But in the examination area of the hospital, Elaine stands with an uncredited nurse, a cigarette clenched in her fingers, as she vents that this whole thing is ridiculous. Elaine says that she knows her own daughter, and that she's just trying to get some attention, and she refuses to play one of her games.
Just give me 5 minutes alone with this bitch. I'm infuriated. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, I also had the same emotion.
Yeah.
Even if that's true, she's crying out for your attention. Maybe, I don't know, give it to her.
Yeah.
Is that too much to ask? I don't know. I was like, ain't no fucking way.
No.
Yeah.
I was so mad.
It just it again, and there is what we see a lot, the pattern of the adults not believing the
Yes.
younger people, and then just kind of like, I know what's best for you, and it's like, no, you don't. It's like, you're not even paying attention to your daughter.
Yeah.
I feel like they could have gone a whole other way and been like, she thought that this really happened. She's upset. She doesn't believe in all the dream stuff or whatever. But to have her so fucking like, whatever. I mean, it was hard for me to watch and not throw something at my TV.
No, it's terrible, but I think it's exactly right what you're saying, JP. This idea of parents not believing their children is so prevalent throughout this franchise entirely.
Yeah.
And it's funny from the first film where they weren't believing their children, but they're like, it's because of something. Because of one thing.
It's a little bit different.
Probably is a little. And I will say that Brooke Bundy, I believe, the actress who plays Elaine, says that she believes firmly that Elaine absolutely played a role.
Okay.
And maybe that's why she is so distant, because she's trying to not even think about something that she played a part in.
Oh my God, I hate her even more.
Yeah. But screams travel down the hallway as Neil and Sims step off of a nearby elevator and head straight towards the distressing sound. Nurse number 1, played by Sally Piper, stops them just outside of an examination room, telling them that this new patient was brought in after a suicide attempt from County General, and when asked, shares that the patient's name is Kristen Parker. The nurse says that everything was fine until they tried to sedate her. The doctors head into the room where Lorenzo, an orderly played by Clayton Landy, dodges thrown objects from a frenzied and screaming Kristen, who stands tearful in her hospital gown.
He's not very great either.
The orderly? No.
No.
No, Lorenzo.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I was going to say that I just love that they've not been overly concerned or preoccupied with matching the screams to her mouth.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Like
And that always makes me laugh.
they'll pay more attention to what she's throwing.
Don't even worry about it.
But Lorenzo warns the doctors that Kristen tore her stitches out, as Neil cautiously approaches her, calmly telling her that they're here to help her. Lorenzo seizes Kristen's shoulders and restrains her. Neil rushes straight for the syringe and the sedative resting on a nearby medical cart, drawing the liquid inside as he pulls the plunger back, and assures Kristen once again that he's here to help her. He introduces himself, and as he begins to approach her, she kicks him right in the gut or the cherries, I couldn't tell.
She meant that shit.
She did. And he crashes to the floor as Kristen tears herself away from Lorenzo. Max then arrives on the scene, and he reaches for Kristen, but she snags a nearby scalpel and slices his forearm with it.
All right, Kristen.
Yeah.
That's true. I can't defend that.
No.
Max retreats at Neil's request, holding his wounded arm, as Kristen puts her back against a window, holding out the scalpel in self-defense. Neil promises her once again that no one is going to hurt her, and he pleads with her to put the scalpel down. Through tears, Kristen sings, 5, 6, grab your crucifix. This song is accompanied by eerie chords in the score as she continues. 7, 8, better stay up late. 9, 10, never, never, but someone finishes the lyric for her. Never sleep again. Everyone in the room turns toward the doorway, and standing there, in all of her experience and expertise, is Nancy Thompson, played by Heather Langenkamp.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah. Inching towards Kristen and passing the speechless medical staff, Nancy, with a wise streak of gray in her hair, asks Kristen where she learned that rhyme. She slowly disarms Kristen, setting the scalpel down, but instead of answering with words, Kristen responds with an earnest and desperate hug. So it's amazing to see Heather Langenkamp back as Nancy.
Yeah.
I will say she was 22 years old when they filmed this.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had talked, I had heard an interview with the production designer, Mick Strawn,
Mm-hmm.
and he had said that the addition of this gray streak in Nancy's hair was to make her appear older,
Okay.
to give her this wisdom to kind of separate herself as an adult from these teenagers who were
Okay.
around the same age, the
Yeah.
actors.
I took it as like a symbol of what she had been through,
Same. Me
you
too.
know?
Yeah.
And I want one.
No, it's great.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Watching Evil Dead, seeing what Ash had to go through to get one.
Maybe it's not.
Yeah.
No. And watching Elm Street 1.
No, yeah.
All right.
I did read that even in Wes Craven's drafts of Dream Warriors,
Mhm.
it was always intended for Nancy to come back in a pivotal role. And I read that he even called Heather Langenkamp and asked her if he could include her in his drafts.
Okay.
And it was something that was held over and kind of a mainstay that continued in the rewrites from Darabont and Russell.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I will say this premise, if you think about it, of Nancy coming back as this experienced psychiatrist,
Yeah.
it's an amazing idea.
It is.
Yeah.
Helping these children. And it does feel like if they would have made this years later, this is the premise of a requel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
So it works very well for me. And I feel like she does so much with Nancy as a character here.
Mm-hmm.
But walking outside together on the grounds, next to an aged marble railing, Nancy asks Neil to tell her about the kids at the facility. Neil calls them survivors, in a way, explaining that they're all severely sleep disordered with insomnia, narcolepsy, and bedwetting. Nancy asks if their nightmares are a common thread, and Neil says that they are. They all seem to share a group delusion, a boogeyman, he says, for the lack of a better term. I know that we've all read and heard about Folie à Deux.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other shared delusional disorders, but just the idea of this, even as a psychiatrist, I feel like science wouldn't save me from my own theories.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every single one of you has the same delusion.
Yeah.
That was my thought, was it's not concerning that we all share this. And this is not Folie à Deux. This is like Folie à Six. Like,
Yeah.
like it I don't know. I was like, Neil.
Yeah,
Come on.
I also understand the foliage and all that, but I
He's like, they are in a garden.
Yeah, but I agree. There's no way every one of you has the same fucking person in your nightmare down to every little detail.
Yeah.
You guys can say it, and you don't even have to be in the same wing, the same room. You didn't come from the same area. What? There is no way for you to be like, oh, it's mass hysteria.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of here.
Neil's like, now I did kill a guy one time with a group of people.
Yeah.
I'm sure that does not have anything to do with this.
Oh, no.
Right? I think your mom was there too, Kristen.
Yeah. And you too, Nancy.
But Neil adds that they're all so traumatized that they'll do anything not to fall asleep. Nancy asks what he means, and Neil guides her to a bench. Once they sit down together, Neil laments the loss of a kid about a month ago to Fairview. He sits puzzled at where this kid could have gotten the razors, but he says that the patient cut off his own eyelids to stay awake.
Oh my God.
Damn.
He says that it shook the other kids up pretty badly. Nancy reacts solemnly and sympathetically, shaking her head. But Neil changes the subject, praising her work with Kristen earlier, calling it pretty smooth for an intern. Nancy smiles, revealing that she's had some experience with pattern nightmares. And she winks at the camera. No, she should. She didn't, but she could have. But she looks down at her watch and tells Neil that she has to get going. But as she stands up to leave, she accidentally drops her purse, the contents spilling on the ground in front of the bench. Neil bends down to help her pick up her things, but the first thing that he reaches for is a prescription bottle for Hypnosil.
His nosy ass looks at this bottle for entirely too long.
He does. Nancy snatches it from him politely, thanking him for his help, and placing the bottle in her purse. As they walk off together, Neil reminds her to be sure that she checks in with Max, promising that he'll give her a whole 25-cent tour of the ward. Nancy is grateful for this, but before they part company, Neil calls her Miss Thompson. She corrects him with a sweet smile, telling him that he can call her Nancy, to which Neil responds that she can call him Neil.
All right.
Yeah.
But he asks her, what was that nursery rhyme all about? Nancy exhales, formulating her answer. It's just something that the kids say to keep the boogeyman away. She walks away, leaving Neil alone to process this, but when he turns around, he's faced with a peculiar sight. Through a crowd of people, a nun, played by Nan Martin, stands in a white habit, dead center in an arched walkway, staring directly at him. After locking eyes like Charlie and Mac at that Italian restaurant, a small smile creeps across the nun's lips. But the crowd passes between them, obstructing Neil's view, and when they disperse, the nun is nowhere to be found. Neil just smirks, seeming to laugh off this odd occurrence. I wouldn't do that.
No, I was like, what the hell was that?
And it's not as if you just see somebody. She was standing in the center of this busy walkway.
Yeah.
So does this mean that this is part of the Conjuring universe?
Yes.
I mean,
No, this is better.
No, it's better than a lot of them.
Yeah. Well. So Nan Martin, I did remember her, and it was very brief, but I was like, I do remember her. She was in Shallow Hal in 2001.
Oh my God.
She also did Castaway in 2000.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I remembered her as the head that Sean was doing the surgery on for his recertification.
That's right.
That was talking shit to on Nip Tuck.
That's right.
Yeah.
I knew she looked so familiar.
I was like, I know her, and it clicked.
But back inside the halls of Weston Hills, Nancy walks with Max, who guides her through the wing of the hospital devoted to their program. After he points out the room for group therapy, he directs her to where her office will be for the time being, explaining that he'll have her set up in her own space by the end of the week. Max then takes her to the patient's rooms, and he opens the door for her, introducing her around the room. First to Philip, who sits with a homemade doll in his lap, Max sharing that they call Philip the Walker. When asked, Philip explains that it's because he sleepwalks. They're not very creative.
Yeah, but I was like,
Yeah.
I'm sure that won't come into play.
No, it's not that important.
Yeah.
But Philip adds that it's a perfectly normal event that their illustrious staff loves to theorize about endlessly. But after Max introduces Philip to Nancy, Philip welcomes her to the snake pit with a scoffing laugh.
The snake pit, a bit of foreshadowing.
Yes.
It did hit me, though, because we discussed the term snake pit last week with Shutter Island.
Yeah.
So I was already like,
There's a lot of overlap these past few weeks.
Accidentally, yeah.
But Nancy is drawn to marionettes hanging on Philip's wall, one crafted to look like an astronaut and the other like a dinosaur or possibly Godzilla. She compliments them, and Philip thanks her, but he says that they really should be carved out of wood, but they won't allow him a knife because he might, and then he mimes harming himself. Max then directs Nancy's attention over to Kincaid, who sits casually on his bed reading a magazine. Max advises Nancy to get a good look at Kincaid as he gets himself thrown into the quiet room so often that she probably won't see him very much. He asks, "Isn't that right, Cool Breeze?" Kincaid concurs, joking that he does it so he won't have to look at Max's ugly face all the time. Max then jokes that he loves Kincaid too, and Nancy tells the boys that it was nice to meet them.
I love Kincaid too.
Yeah.
I also wanted to point out Philip is Eyeball Chambers from Stand By Me.
No shit.
Yeah. I was like, I know you as soon as I saw him.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And what's really weird too, if you're helping these kids, why do you keep throwing them in a room like that?
Yeah.
That didn't help me in prison. That's not going to help these kids.
It doesn't help anyone.
No.
Yeah.
I have it as a note later on when we see the room again, but I'm like, does anybody else think that this room shouldn't be here?
Yeah.
Is this really a fucking bad idea?
I will say the scene does accomplish something for me by way of showing Max's relationship with them as well.
Right.
Because he does seem to care about these kids and they kind of have a bit of a rapport.
Yeah.
It's really just Sims that is just an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as they re-enter the hallway, Max admits that they're really good kids, but he urges Nancy not to let them fool her, remarking that they're dangerous to themselves and to each other. But they pass Joey, played by Rodney Eastman, who leans out of an adjacent bathroom, watching them. But when Joey enters the hallway, Marcy, a nurse played by Stacey Alden, wheels out a cart filled with towels out of the laundry room. Joey watches as a few towels tumble from the folded pile, and he rushes over to help her with them. Marcy greets Joey, thanking him for his help, but Lorenzo arrives on the scene, asking if these towels are headed for C Ward, and after learning that they are, he offers to accompany Marcy there. As they walk together, Marcy tells Joey that she'll see him later, and the camera settles on Joey, clearly and quite obviously nursing a crush.
Yeah.
Hello, nurse. No, but I the way that this scene appeared to me, I was like, oh, somebody needs to keep an eye on Joey.
Okay.
But that's not accurate at all.
Not really.
No. And I did want to say I noticed it and I didn't notice it again. But he does have a tattoo teardrop.
Yes.
on
He
his
does.
face, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
In this scene.
In this
yes.
scene.
That's what I was like,
Yeah.
what is going on with this
Yeah.
kid?
Not to bring it back to Nip Tuck, but that's where I learned what that means.
One tear.
For every kill. Yeah. So I'm
Well,
like,
then,
what the
yeah, I
hell?
would be like, oh, he's dangerous then.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
And that would be the perfect segue from what Max just said.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then we're like, never mind.
Well, because it felt like it was priming you for, but watch out. And it's like, no, he's a lovable
No.
little, he's fine.
But in the next scene, we find Nancy at the Parker residence, sitting on the couch across from Elaine. Nancy asks Elaine if Kristen was acting any differently recently, or if she noticed anything strange before this recent attempt. But Elaine spits back that Kristen specializes in strangeness, and that she spent thousands on psychiatrists. She stacks a bunch of papers, handing them back to Nancy, who asks if Kristen has always had these nightmares. Smoking a cigarette, Elaine sarcastically replies that the nightmares have gotten worse since she's taken away Kristen's credit cards. Nancy insists that she's serious, but Elaine responds agitated that she doesn't know what Nancy wants from her. Nancy just wants some answers, reminding Elaine that there are other kids involved, not just Kristen. Good kids. Smart kids. Elaine expresses her sympathy with a bit of attitude, but reminds Nancy that she's the expert, not her. She assures her that if she had any insight into what was going on, she would share it. Nancy sarcastically agrees that she's sure Elaine would, as Elaine rises from her seat, excusing herself for a previous engagement downtown.
She said, if you'll excuse me, Miss Thompson, I do have a dick appointment to get to.
Oh, right.
But I'm like, we've had a couple scenes with Kristen so far.
Mm-hmm.
And what she said at the very beginning when Elaine catches her up past one, that was alarming.
Yeah.
You walk in, your daughter's fucking rubbing instant coffee on her gums to fucking stay awake because the nightmares are so bad. She literally does not want to go to sleep. That is alarming. That is strange. If somebody that specializes in this is like, is there anything strange? Yeah. Yes. I took her fucking credit card. Like, you
Yeah.
just suck.
Like
you suck.
She started listening to a lot of Dawkins recently.
That's the root cause. I hate her. I hate Elaine.
No, she sucks.
Yeah.
And now she's got this appointment with the detective or whatever he said.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But Nancy collects her paperwork and tells Elaine that she'll need to get Kristen's things. Elaine tells her that a suitcase has been packed and then calls out to a housekeeper, annoyed when she doesn't respond. Nancy then offers to get the suitcase herself, and the camera arcs around her through the lavish place that the Parkers call home as she heads up the stairs to Kristen's room. Nancy pushes the door open, a clock ticking incessantly in the background as she surveys the area, but she suddenly stops when she sees something incredibly familiar. Kristen's papier-mâché project that rests on her desk, a near-perfect replica of Nancy's former house at 1428 Elm Street. She stares at it, recognition resting on her face.
It's a very tame reaction.
Yeah.
I feel like, have you been watching me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably would have had a little more bigger reaction to that. Like, is that my fucking house?
Yeah.
It's like, there's no way you know what my house looks like.
No, I don't know you.
Yeah.
But, I mean, yeah, right.
I don't know.
At the same time, though, I think that if you're Nancy and you already are aware and believe in all this stuff, this might just be confirmation.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. I just think I'd be a little more upset that it's like, oh, this is what it is. It's happening again.
We already dealt
Okay.
with that.
Yeah.
There was a film about it.
Yeah.
But that night at his house, Neil sits in front of a computer scanning the screen as he reads a document about the drug Hypnosil. The side effects are listed simply as local irritation, but the FDA classification is far more interesting, calling the drug experimental, but effective for the management of psychotic disorders, for sedation where dreamless sleep is considered optimal, and for the suppression of night terrors. After reading this, Neil takes off his glasses, pondering the information before shutting off his monitor.
There's no I in Hypnosil, at least not where you think. I do want to give it up for a mini research scene.
Yes.
Okay.
I was a little surprised, though, given his expertise, that he's not heard of this before. I was like, how experimental is this?
Yeah.
I think what's so strange, though, is that as it goes on later, everyone's like, yeah, I know about it. But he has heard.
But Neil's like, what is this?
But back at Weston Hills, Kristen lies in her bed under the light of 2 lamps with a sketch pad on her lap. The camera presses in to reveal Kristen's drawing. It's a rough but detailed sketch of Nancy's old house, the strokes of her pencil shading in the pillars of the front porch. But her shading grows slower and slower as her eyes begin to close, welcoming the embrace of the Sandman. But just as soon as she closes her eyes, they open again, when her room door creaks open slowly. The shadow of a tricycle stretches across the tile floor, followed by the object itself, its seat as red as the streaks of blood dragged across the floor by its squeaking wheels. Kristen climbs out of bed, backing out of the room as steam begins to hiss from the tricycle, and it collapses in on itself to the sound of screaming children. I did read an interview with Peter Chesney, who worked on the mechanical effects for Dream Warriors, and he had said that they originally wanted to make this tricycle out of wax and just simply melt it, but Russell really wanted to see the shot of it being wheeled in as well, and so they had to come up with a different idea for it, and so what they did is they had to make it to where it appeared to melt. And they accomplished this with the help of 26 wires that were pulled very specifically.
Damn.
It took 1 hour to set up, he said, and he said that Chuck Russell's inspiration was the clocks in Dolly's The Persistence of Memory.
Yeah, okay.
And you can tell.
Yeah.
But Kristen backs out of the room and into the hall, the door in front of her closing on its own. But the camera pulls back with a flourish in the score to reveal that she's no longer at Weston Hills, and the closed door is revealed to be the familiar front entrance of the abandoned house at 1428 Elm Street. This dream logic, I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they keep doing it and keep doing it. Please. I want you to. But inside the house, Kristen pulls the doorknob with all her might but is unable to wrench it open. With no other options, she ventures inside the house and into the dining room as the music tensely rises around her. A platter rests upon the white tablecloth, and a dinner of what appears to be the remains of a roasted pig has been served. The camera floats around Kristen to her view of the set table, flies buzzing all around her. But as she gazes down, the roasted pig suddenly snarls at her, causing her to scream and make her swift exit.
I loved this.
Yeah.
And I loved it even more once I found out how they accomplished it. Because Chuck Russell said that this is his favorite gag in the film, if he had to pick one. He said that the animatronic pig that they wanted was $5,000.
Jesus.
And like, just to kind of refer back to what you said earlier about this budget that already had been massively cut, they couldn't afford it. So he was like, it's important not to give up on your ideas whenever it's possible to keep it going. So you can't afford an animatronic pig. Maybe you get a real pig.
Are you?
And maybe you let the real pig rot.
Are you kidding me, dude?
No. They took an actual pig, they let it rot, and then he said that the prop masters drew straws to see who had to hide under the table and stick their hand up to make, like, into the pig with the rubber glove on to make it lurch forward.
Okay.
Yeah, and they were like, I can still, if I think about it, I can still smell that pig.
Yeah, you know that room smell wild.
Yes!
Yeah, I feel like you probably could have got the same thing with the roasted pig, and then maybe just kind of jazz it up a
Put
little
stuff
bit.
on
Yeah.
it,
Cut some chunks out, put some worms on there or something, or maggots
fake,
or something.
like rice or something.
I don't know if you have to let it
No,
rot.
let it rot.
Well, I mean,
That shit stinks.
yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I said fake rice. I meant real rice.
Fake
But
maggots.
yeah.
But yeah, I
But-
was like, that's fucking wild. Just the fact that you have this lofty goal of this high-tech animatronic pig and you're like, let's just get a rotten one. It's like, let's quick pivot.
And again, the funny thing about it is this scare lasts like, what, 2 seconds?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they
But
ruin
honestly,
everybody's
it's
life.
Fast. Yeah.
Yeah, that's traumatic.
Yeah.
I worked at a 7-Eleven one time and a snake crawled under the counter and died. And if I think about it, I can still smell it. Like, those things stick with you forever. I feel bad for everybody that was there.
Yeah.
And me for that
Snake?
job when that happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just I thought it was hilarious in the fact that he's like, oh no, that's my favorite thing.
But Kristen creeps through the darkness of the hallway and into the living room, where the lights switch on upon her entry. Kristen looks around the room to see a chair resting in the corner and a somewhat filled bookcase built into the wall. But she then looks down to see a massive red rug at the center of the room that she's currently standing on. And it really ties the room together. But suddenly, a shape appears under the rug, pulsating and vibrating its way towards Kristen, surrounding her as the walls begin to burst and the light fixtures shatter a rain of sparks. They buzz and blink around Kristen as she tries to make sense of what she's just experienced. But before calmness can return to her, she's lifted from her feet, taken as prey by a slick, sludgy, and snake-like creature. It slams her to the floor, devouring her slowly from the feet up, wearing the face of Freddy Krueger. Its eyes unyielding and its hunger insatiable as its jaw widens around Kristen's body to swallow her whole. Kristen screams as she tries to crawl away, but her screams suddenly become focused, able to articulate one name: Nancy. But we cut to Nancy at home, resting in her chair in comfortable clothes with her eyes closed. She opens her eyes and places the patient file she was reading onto a nearby table and rises to her feet. Glancing over at Kristen's papier-mâché project that she took with her from her room, Nancy hears Kristen's cries for her cutting through the silence of her evening. She focuses on the replica of her former home, seemingly overcome as she puts her palm to her forehead, falling back into her chair. But instead of finding a seat there, Nancy passes through the chair entirely, crashing through a mirror in the nightmarish abstraction of her former living room. She crashes to the floor, and when she raises her head, she's faced with the horrific sight of Freddy making a slithering supper of Kristen. She grabs an errant piece of glass, rushing straight for them without hesitation and stabbing the monster right in the head. It lets out a low shriek, which reverberates through the house as it drops Kristen to the floor, coated in slime from the waist down. Kristen rises to her feet, and Nancy shields her from the creature, its large face rising in a snarl, and with recognition, it bellows at Nancy. You. Nancy can't believe her eyes, muttering, "Oh my God," before urging Kristen to run. They exit the room, slamming the door behind them as Freddy charges for them. She shouts at Kristen, urging her to get them out and to do it now. Kristen presses her fingers to her temples, and just as Freddy makes short work of the door, wooden splinters exploding from its center, Nancy wakes up with a start, back in her chair at home. But she raises her hand, finding a small cut at the bottom of her left palm.
I really love this scene because, first of all, we're seeing Freddy just doing his fucking thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this old beef being reignited in this way. It's just really, really cool.
Yeah.
But I did find a couple things about Snake Freddy. It was this giant puppet, and there was a bit of contention once again because they sculpt this giant thing according to them the way that Russell and Darabont wanted it, and they bring it to them and they're like, that is a giant penis. And I saw a thing with one of the guys that built it, and he was like, that's what you asked for. We had meetings about it looking like a giant penis. And Russell was like, no, we don't want it. Like, that's not going to work. Again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's still the puppet that we get, but they repainted it into like kind of blues and greens and less like, I guess, organic tones.
Mhm.
Because I guess it was Freddy colored, which, yeah, I mean, it would have. But I didn't,
Okay.
that's not immediately. And John Paul and I, our minds are in the gutter constantly. But I don't know about you. That didn't occur to me.
No, that's just kind of what I took it as was, oh, he's a big snake.
He's a snake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also read that when he's eating Kristen, the puppet did not move the way it was supposed to. Like, because it just seemed like this was such a stressful piece of the film because already they had put this thing together and they're like, no, that's not good enough. When to them, that was the specifications, whatever. And now it's not even working right.
Mm-hmm.
So what they had to do when Snake Freddy is eating Kristen is do it in reverse.
Oh, wow.
They're pulling the snake away from her, but in reverse, it's like he's chomping at her,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
is, it's brilliant.
I read in this interview with Chesney, he had said that one of the issues that they had was that they built the mouth originally was too small for Patricia Arquette's feet to fit into by a matter of inches. And so they were
Oh.
like, fuck. And so they had to go back and kind of figure it out. But I did also hear in an interview, it was with Elm Street Radio, it was Mick Strawn, one of the art directors / production designers, because there is no production designer credited for the film, but there are 2 art directors credited. It's Mick Strawn and CJ Strawn, brother and sister.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
But Strawn had said that they had kind of built this entire set around the track that the snake would follow.
Okay.
And so they built the walls out of this very brittle material so that whenever it needed to crash through, it was easy enough to do. And you can see the cracks almost form organically.
Yeah.
And it allowed for everything to follow the movement of the snake, for the snake to like dictate everything
Well,
Yeah.
that was happening, because it's kind of
kind
important.
of the focal point.
Yeah.
But another thing that was really interesting, the first bits of snake-like movement that we see under the rug, he had said that they wanted to have a much bigger set piece with that, but as they were doing it, it came off more as an earthquake than something moving underneath it.
Okay.
And so what they ended up doing, according to him, is that they had this like big Clorox bottle and they pulled it with a string. So the very, very, very first thing that you see of that movement is a Clorox bottle under that rug.
That's brilliant.
One thing that is interesting to me is that we have a lot of nightmares as we continue on that are very specific and very targeted towards who he's trying to scare the shit out of.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard word one about a snake, so I don't know where exactly this one came from.
It's deep. It's deep in there.
Yeah.
Especially when they crawl under the counter at 7-Eleven and die.
Is this your nightmare?
Yes.
But the next morning, wasting no time at all, Nancy enters her temporary office, carrying the model of her former home. Kristen sits in a chair in front of Nancy's desk, where Nancy places the peculiar project. She tells Kristen that she used to live in this house, and Kristen says that it's just a house that she dreams about. But Nancy asks if Kristen has ever done anything like she did last night before, pulled someone into her dream. Kristen shares that when she was a little girl, if she had a nightmare, she would always bring her father into it, and the dreams would always get better afterward. She says that he would even tell her about it the next day, thinking that they were his dreams.
That's cute, but you were putting your dad in a lot of danger.
He's just trying to rest.
It would be after some time and be like, look, all my dreams are of rescuing you.
Yeah.
What's going on?
What's happening here?
What's my brain trying to tell me?
Yeah.
But Nancy chuckles at this, and Kristen says that this stopped when she was still a kid, after her parents divorced. And after a while, she thought that she might have just imagined the whole thing, but now she realizes she didn't. Nancy calls Kristen's power an amazing gift, but Kristen has a question of her own. The man in her dreams, he's real, isn't he? Now sitting at the edge of her desk, Nancy sighs a deep exhale, admitting, he's real.
Not really what I was hoping you would say,
No.
but here we are, yeah.
Kristen's like, and he knows you, doesn't he?
That felt personal.
But later that day in group therapy, Nancy sits in a circle of chairs with Kristen, Dr. Sims, Joey, Jennifer, Kincaid, Philip, Taryn, and Will, played by Ira Hayden. Neil joins the proceedings, announcing that the group is now in session and reminding everyone that it's straight talk only in this room. Sims proposes starting by getting everyone acquainted with Nancy, their new staff member. Nancy smiles at the group as they all make her feel welcome, and Neil acknowledges that Nancy has already met Philip, Kincaid, and Kristen, but asks for the rest of the group to tell Nancy something about themselves. The group starts with Will, who sits in a wheelchair, and explains to Nancy that it was the result of an accident. Taryn retorts, "Accident my ass," and reminds Neil of his words that it was only supposed to be straight talk in this meeting. Kincaid defends Will by attacking Taryn, saying so what if Will took a jump? At least he wasn't sticking needles into his arms with a bunch of lowlifes.
All right.
Yeah, calm down.
I know he said that there's only straight talk here, but why isn't he stepping in at all?
There's a line.
Taryn flips off Kincaid in a few different ways as Sims steps in, telling Kincaid to save it. Sims directs the introductions to Jennifer, who shares her full name and states that as soon as she gets out of here, she's going to Los Angeles to be an actress, declaring that she's going to be on television. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Kincaid concurs sarcastically, announcing her future role in Lifestyles of the Rich and Psychotic.
Come on, man. This kid's just full of them.
Yeah. He was up all night writing. And then if she says, then I'll say. But other patients laugh, and Jennifer fires back a screw you. Jennifer then places a hand on Joey's shoulder, introducing him to Nancy, explaining that he used to be a big debater in school, but now he doesn't talk so much. He waves at Nancy and she smiles back, but then Taryn introduces herself, expressing the only reason that she's here is that it's better than Juvie Hall, but she admits that also she's been going through some very strange shit. Nancy nods in understanding. Her dreams. But Taryn counters that everyone has bad dreams. Philip interjects, however, telling Nancy that according to Neil, all of their dreams are a group psychosis, a mellow mass hysteria. He says that the fact that they've all dreamed about this guy before they ever even met doesn't seem to impress anybody.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. And mass hysteria, come on, man.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a bit much, dude. We're all going through something that's terrifying, and none of it sounds like we're just being hysterical to be hysterical.
No.
Like we all have one common thing. We're all saying the same thing. It doesn't sound like this is made up.
Mm-hmm.
I could almost see, and you guys know me, I'd be like, oh, fuck, there's something going on. But I could almost see if they all started dreaming about him after they got here.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
okay,
you guys are like
Talking.
amping each other up. You're telling each other stories before they ever met. And you're like, shut up, science bitch.
Yeah.
That is, I can't. I am disappointed in Neil, frankly.
Do you remember that old meme of like, ever dream this man?
Yeah.
And it looked like the guy from Twin Peaks? Yes. But that, at least, I mean, that was it was a hoax, firstly.
Yeah.
But to me, I think stuff like that doesn't happen, even with this idea of science. Stuff like that doesn't happen without some kind of supernatural element. There is no way that it's like 6 kids here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like, oh, he's just some tall guy with brown hair. It's like, no, this is a very,
No.
this is a very
specific
distinct-
man.
Yeah.
Well, again, for the ones who do or have suffered from sleep paralysis, everybody's demon is different.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the same. If it was like, man, I had an episode happen the other day, and it's like some scary shit, and your sister had to wake me up, and you're like, well, wait,
Yeah.
did you?
No.
Did yours look like? And then I have a very worried face. That's a problem.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
a little more than you guys are just being hysterical.
Yeah, no.
No, come on.
And I'm sorry, even if he looked a little different, even if sometimes he's a snake, or whatever, but he's got a green and red sweater.
Yeah.
That to me is enough to say, okay, something weird is going on.
Yes.
But after Philip says that this doesn't seem to impress anybody, Sims eyes Philip, clearly unimpressed, as he continues that they go in circles making minimal progress with maximum effort. Sims retorts that they won't make any progress until they recognize their dreams for what they are. Nancy asks what they are, and Sims puts it plainly: the byproducts of guilt, psychological scars stemming from moral conflicts and overt sexuality.
You're all just too horny.
Where are you getting this?
Yeah.
From her asshole. That's ridiculous.
So she is the asshole, and she's getting it from her ass.
Yes.
That's the source that she is citing, yes.
But Kincaid jokes, "Oh, great. Now it's my D that's killing me." The other patients laugh, but Sims just sighs. But after an exterior shot of the hospital, we return inside, later that night in the patients' rooms. Taryn is playing a board game with Will and Joey on a bed, asking what is supposed to be happening again. Will explains that she's being attacked by the bog demon and urges her to roll the dice. Taryn rolls a 14, which Will says doesn't count until she says the words. Calling it stupid at first, Taryn finally does after taking a drag of her cigarette. "In the name of Lorik, Prince of Elves, demon be gone." Will, the wizard master, congratulates Taryn for conquering the demon, but he reveals that her horse is sinking in the bog and asks her what she'll do. Taryn smiles, offering that she'll go to bed and get a new horse in the morning.
You're going to have to roll for that, too.
Yeah,
you
it doesn't work that way.
She climbs out of the bed with her can of Coca-Cola, leaving the room with Will wondering how he scores that. Enchanted slumber or death?
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting.
Very.
Yeah.
That one went right past me.
Yeah.
I thought it was so cute that they're just in there playing D&D.
Yeah.
I like these kids. I like this group from when they're all, even though some of the interactions were not very nice,
Yeah.
Mhm.
when they're all interacting with each other in group and like how clearly they all know each other, they're comfortable with each other. I just thought that this in particular was very cute.
Yeah, and I think, too, it might... they were being jerks to each other, but it might also show how frustrated they are here.
Yeah.
And how long this has been going on. And it's like we hear the same thing over, like you said, over and over. We give it all we've got, and we've still got nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
To me, I feel like a lot of their interactions just read as sibling,
Yeah.
where this is like the older sister playing with the two little brothers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then in group, I guess, Kincaid's.
The bully brother.
And I will say, I did read in an interview that Ira Hayden, the actor who plays Will,
Mm-hmm.
was apparently really big into D&D, and so this just fit him perfectly.
I
Okay.
love that. And honestly, watching this, my note was, I wonder if these strategies are going to come into play later.
Mm. But to answer Will's question about whether this leads to enchanted sleep or death, Joey drags his finger across his throat. But the game is over when Max arrives, telling the boys that it's lights out. Will is disappointed that the game is over, but Max helps him from his chair into his bed, pulling the blankets over him and bidding both boys goodnight before shutting off the lights and closing the door. As soon as he leaves, Will and Joey rise from their pillows. Will tells Joey that he gets first shift, but when Joey replies in a frustrated point towards Will laments that he had first shift last night. Joey accepts his shift to the gratitude of Will, who reminds Joey, just remember, keep your eyes open, and one whimper, wake him up. Joey understands, patting Will on the leg as he rises from his bed to take his post at a chair in the corner of the room.
This is so sad.
Yeah.
And it was even sadder to me the more that I thought about it, because I was like, why aren't they bringing this up in group? But I'm like, why would they? Nobody fucking believes them.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, well, we got to look out for each other then. Like that is so sad.
I will say, and honestly, that's too comfortable a spot for me to be trying to stay awake all night.
Yeah.
I'm in the corner, in a chair, just relaxing. In the dark, oh no, I'm going to go to bed.
It's over?
Yeah, I'm going to go to bed.
But elsewhere, at a restaurant, Nancy sits at a booth with Neil. She remarks that the place is nice, and Neil is surprised that she's never been here before. Nancy thinks they opened it while she was away at college, and Neil boasts that it's the best Thai food in Springwood, or rather, the only Thai food in Springwood. Neil asks if Nancy's parents still live around here, and Nancy offers a somewhat stilted response that her mother passed away. She, died in her sleep. We're leaving out a lot. Like the pulsing electric light and the blue skeleton or whatever.
But I mean, technically,
She
Yes.
did,
you know?
but still. Neil expresses his sympathies, and Nancy adds that things kind of fell apart between her and her father afterwards. Neil acknowledges that it sounds like a rough time, and Nancy agrees that it was. But she asks him, Neil, what if I told you that your patients are in real physical danger from their dreams? Neil attempts to remind Nancy that the nightmares are merely a symptom of their real problems, and Nancy asks if they could just eliminate the symptom for the time being, and Neil asks plainly, with Hypnosil? Nancy confirms this. Neil asks her if she really wants him to prescribe an experimental psychoactive drug to a bunch of suicidal teenagers, and Nancy adds that it's just until they can get things under control. But Neil reminds her that dream deprivation is nothing to fool around with, and comments that Nancy has no business taking the drug herself. He has no way of knowing that?
No.
What if that's exactly what she needs?
Yeah.
Neil, have a seat.
But Nancy admits that she used to be like these kids and knows what they're going through. Neil says that he does too, but Nancy returns his previous words to him. These teenagers are survivors to be sure, but how long they survive is up to them.
First of all, no, you don't.
No.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
I was like, I doubt that, dude.
I think that he, again, and the thing is that if he's operating just from the space of science,
Yeah.
what he thinks is going on, maybe he does think that he has this knowledge.
Yeah. But she's got the academic knowledge and personal experience.
Yeah.
So why would we ever listen to her?
And she has this expertise in pattern dreams.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no.
But Neil knows better.
And I mean, you're right. And I get that. But again, like we said earlier, if everyone before they got here is having this dream about this man in the green and red sweater and the hat and whatever, I get what you're saying. You know, if he's like, oh, this is, you know, a group thing or whatever. But again, dude, you've never dreamt about Freddy. You can't know exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And one thing I will admit that's a little confusing is he even expressed his doubts about Sims's theory to Max.
But
Earlier.
in group, he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, they're too horny. Jot that down.
Yeah, well, she said it again. It sounded different.
I'm sold. I mean, what
Yeah.
can I say?
But after thinking about what Nancy suggested for about a millisecond, Neil apologizes, telling Nancy that the answer is no. Frustrated, Nancy just looks away, removing her chopsticks from their napkin. But back at Weston Hills, the camera creeps through the darkness to the sleeping face of Philip, who lies asleep underneath the wall of his hanging marionettes. His partially finished creation hangs on the wall next to his completed works. But suddenly, it raises its head, its unformed face transforming before our very eyes into the sneering facade of Freddy Krueger. His lump of a hand quickly forms proper digits, small blades extending from his fingertips. Glancing over to Philip's sleeping face with a sinister chuckle, Freddy cuts himself loose from his strings, dropping to the floor and creeping over to the foot of Philip's bed.
I absolutely love this.
Amazing.
Yes.
When we pass by them and they're on the wall, I was like, please, please, please. And then we did go back to him. I was like, oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
He just turned into Freddy. I was like, that's that. You did that for me.
Yeah.
And it looks like stop motion.
Yeah.
It's so good. I did see that the work with the kind of transition of the faces was done by Greg Canham, who has done, I saw you perk up, so much shit. It's unbelievable. I mean, like, check out this IMDb, but just things that we've covered: Exorcism of Emily Rose, Exorcist 3, and Thinner.
Yeah.
That's the one.
The legendary film Thinner. But they talked about how it was multiple heads that they had made and they dissolved it in camera from one to the next.
That is just so cool.
Yeah.
It looks fucking amazing.
Oh, yeah.
But at the foot of Philip's bed, the puppet grows to Freddy's full height, appearing fully realized and in the flesh. Philip's eyes open, and at the sight of Freddy, he's unable to silence his scream. But Freddy just shushes him from afar, putting the blade of his glove to his own lips. With a wave of his finger, Philip's blanket is ripped from him, and as Freddy continues his movements, psychic slashes are carved into Philip's frame. The camera pulls back to reveal long, angry wounds down Philip's arms and legs. They yawn open, and his veins rise from them, raising him up from his bed like a macabre marionette. He's using our interest against us, which is really...
Yeah.
Honestly, it's mean.
so rude. But Philip lurches forward, under Freddy's control, his arms pulled in front of him and his feet stomping across the floor. The sound of his steps stir a sleeping Kincaid, who calls out to Philip. To Kincaid's eyes, though, Philip, the Walker, is merely living up to his nickname as he marches clumsily into the hall. Kincaid calls for Philip to wake up, but when he doesn't and fails to respond, Kincaid just offers, "Have a nice stroll, asshole," before rolling over and returning to sleep.
Now, Kincaid.
Yeah.
I don't know how he usually sleepwalks.
No.
Yeah.
But this doesn't look like sleepwalking.
That kind of was my note.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what this usually looks like, but that doesn't look normal.
It's giving Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
But I am also like, if he is known to do this, why is nobody watching?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Because even as I'm sure you're getting to in a second, it's like, dude,
Yeah.
put some eyes on this hallway.
Yeah.
And it's wild to me that Will and Joey are like, all right, you look out for me, I'll look out for you. Kincaid's like, well, fuck you. I'm going back to sleep. That's crazy.
Well, they were both asleep.
Yeah.
They were.
And there is something, I know, again, this movie, it's a horror movie, but there's a lot of fun to be had in a lot of moments of this film.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dark shit in this film as well. But I feel like this visual of him, the way that his arms are arched in front of him, it is a frightening visual.
Yes.
Yeah, and again, you're sleepwalking. What are you dreaming about that you're walking that way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even not seeing, like if we're looking through Kincaid's eyes, not seeing the veins,
Yeah.
it's still creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, someone help him.
Yeah. But in his nightmare, Philip struggles against his sanguineous strings, his heart thumping loudly as he continues onward against his will, the tops of his feet torn open and plodding their way towards the reception desk. Nurse number 2, played by Rosalind Sorrell, is too preoccupied with her work to notice Philip creeping by in front of her. But it seems that it really wouldn't matter if she looked up at all because Philip just transports himself through a closed door at the end of the hall.
Oh, okay.
Logic and proportion have fallen sloppy dead.
Yeah. That was great.
Thank you. But Joey, however, still on his first shift, sits reading a magazine in his chair. But when he looks out of his window, he sees Philip standing precariously on the elevated edge of the hospital's bell tower. Upon seeing this, he rushes over to wake Will, who puts on his glasses. Joey drags him over to a chair next to the window, and Will shouts for Joey to go get some help. As Joey runs off, Will bangs on the barred windows, eventually smashing through the glass with a nearby lamp as he screams for Philip to wake up. Joey runs as fast as he can to get the attention of the nurse at reception, and when she doesn't meet his urgency, he steals a metal food tray that rests on the reception desk, spilling its contents as he rushes down the hall.
I was like, he's not fucking Lassie. Clearly there's something wrong.
Yeah.
She's like, what is it, boy?
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I was getting fucking mad.
But he bangs the tray against the patient room doors as he goes, and upon waking, the other teens join him in the hall, following him back to his and Will's bedroom. Will screams for Philip, as do Kristen, Taryn, and Kincaid, who join him at the window. But Philip writhes against Freddy's control, his heart thumping as Freddy appears gigantic above the hospital, a malevolent master of puppets.
I loved it.
Yeah.
But suddenly, Freddy cuts the strings connected to Philip, which causes him to lose his balance, and he falls from a great height to his death, to the sorrow of his sleepless friends. So this is arguably one of the, visually most frightening and striking sequences in the film.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I really love how they accomplished everything that they did, and you feel as well this staff is failing these kids.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And all they have is each other.
1,000%.
No, yeah. I mean, Philip fell off the Titantron, and then we're
Really?
and they're like, oh man, you guys go to bed.
And
Yeah.
But the next morning at group therapy, with everyone gathered, Neil expresses his hope to discuss what happened last night, for everyone to get their feelings out and into the open. Everyone sits silent for a moment until Kincaid blurts out that Philip wasn't strong enough, so he got wasted. That's all. Taryn scoffs at Kincaid's assessment, and when he reiterates it, she sarcastically calls Kincaid a big, tough badass, asking him how long he's going to last. Kincaid proclaims that he's going to last longer than any of them, and Kristen urges him to go ahead and fight because that's exactly what he wants. Sims asks who she's talking about, and Jennifer asks, "Who do you think?"
I'm
Yeah.
damn.
We've only all spoken of him.
Yeah.
Listen.
So the study has failed because you're
Yes.
not listening
Yeah.
to anything
Not
we
at
said.
all.
She's like, I don't know what this has to do with their overt sexuality.
Yeah.
Just going to jot down some notes here. But Kristen explains that this is what he wants, to turn them all against each other so they'll be weak, easy prey. Kincaid disagrees, but Nancy says that Kristen is right. Sims cuts through, however, telling the group that everyone is missing the point. Philip's death was a sleepwalking accident and nothing more. Will says that Sims is wrong. He saw Philip's face up there in the tower. He was wide awake, all the way down. Neil interjects that it was a suicide, then, and incredibly coldly, repeats Kincaid's words that Philip quit. He gave up.
No, Neil.
No.
Yeah.
Jesus
What the fuck?
Christ.
It's just unbelievable. And the other thing as well, if Sims and Neil think that this was a sleepwalking accident or they think that it was something else that isn't supernatural, when the fuck did they crack down on the staff for not doing anything?
Yeah.
That.
They just
Yeah.
were like, whatever.
Because how the fuck did he even make it up there? If this
Yeah.
is all on the up and up.
It was right here, and I was like, you guys should not be running this. You're gaslighting them, and
Yeah.
it's like, dude, don't. It was an accident. He couldn't take the program. Dude, you made the program to help us. You're not listening to us.
No.
You're not helping
Again,
us.
yeah, that wasn't an accident. He looked like he was being controlled, led up. How did he even get up there?
That.
It's like, what?
And I feel like I know that this is not a modern film by any means, but from a mental health professional, this
Yeah. That was...
I was like, oh no, that ain't
Yeah.
it. That ain't it.
And does anybody have any camera, security
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
anything of him teleporting through that door? I
We
think...
should probably roll back the tape.
Yeah. But Neil continues even further, declaring what Philip did was cowardly and that he not only let himself down, but he let all of them down.
That.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, oh, no, dude, no.
Taryn interrupts Neil, declaring that it was murder and asking him if he can understand that that bastard murdered Philip. But Sims refuses to entertain that line of thought, asking in frustration how much longer they're all going to blame their dreams for their own weaknesses. Kincaid demands to know how much longer the doctors are going to keep blowing smoke up their asses, but he is silenced by Neil, and Sims then announces that there will be no repeat occurrences of last night's events, because from this point forward, everyone's doors will be locked during sleeping hours, and they plan to start a policy of evening sedation for everybody.
So a fire hazard.
That's
Yeah. Yeah.
What is this hospital?
This is, you guys are just fucking making up rules left and right.
How
Jesus.
How is there somebody worse than the monster in the movie?
Yeah. Freddy's like, damn.
Yeah.
Even I wouldn't do that.
But Kincaid rises from his chair with fury, promising that anyone who tries to drug him will get their ass kicked. Sims immediately presses a buzzer, summoning Max and Lorenzo, who subdue Kincaid against his loud and profane protests. Sims tells him that his behavior has brought him a night in the quiet room, and as he's dragged out of the room, Kincaid shouts that nobody is going to put him to sleep.
That is the behavior that y'all are locking him up for?
Yeah.
For saying, I'm not going to let you drug me?
I was
Yeah.
fucking appalled. On a regular day. Come on. That's too much. His friend just died.
Yeah.
Let him be a little upset.
Yeah.
This is what you're putting these kids in fucking solitary for?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's very confusing because if I'm here to get better, that doesn't make me get better.
No.
That only makes it worse.
And you're a mental health professionals?
I would like to
Yeah.
see some
Yeah.
some kind of identification.
Anything. I haven't even seen either of your offices.
Yeah, no shit.
They just showed up.
Yeah. But Nancy, Neil, and Sims follow the orderlies and Kincaid out into the hall, and Sims reiterates to her staff that they'll begin sedation tonight, starting with Kincaid.
That was just
Yeah.
that was on purpose.
Yeah. Nancy pleads with her that she can't do this, telling Sims that the kids will be defenseless against their dreams. But Sims says that that's exactly what they need, uninterrupted REM sleep to release all of their negative energy.
So you think that if you put me to sleep, I'm going to have a wet dream and then fix everything?
I don't think...
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Because that's what she said, right?
No. Not at all.
No, she did. She did. She said we were too horny. So the things were
That is
wrong.
what I mean. That tracks.
Yeah.
That thought process tracks.
Yeah, but the connection is...
Get it out.
The connection is flimsy.
But it's there. It's there.
Flimsy, but there.
No. And just to point out, Kincaid was sleeping.
Yeah, he was.
There's flaw one.
Yeah. But Neil suddenly has a change of heart, telling Sims that he's going to prescribe them with Hypnocil and explaining to her that it's a dream suppressant. Sims has heard of it, but responds with utter disbelief, accusing Nancy of talking him into this prescription. But Neil shoots back that Nancy hasn't talked him into anything. These are his patients. This is his decision, and he wants those dreams stopped until they can get some answers, which is exactly what Nancy said.
I was going to say, what a drastic and very familiar change of heart.
But Sims refuses to allow this, which prompts Neil to threaten to go above her head to a Dr. Carver, dropping the bomb that Carver will either back him up or accept his resignation. Sims finally relents, allowing the prescription of Hypnocil, but warns that if anything goes wrong, she'll make sure that Neil is held responsible for all of it. She storms off, and Neil stands surprised by his own tenacity. But Nancy asks him if he thinks that he can get the Hypnocil by tomorrow, and Neil assures her that they can try. But before he exits, he says that he hopes Nancy knows what she's getting everyone into. Neil with the heel turn during the group therapy session.
Mm-hmm.
And then the babyface turn out in the hall.
My
Yeah.
head's spinning.
Yeah.
It's too many turns.
It's too many. I think just after how he was acting, I didn't expect for him to side with Nancy so suddenly.
Yeah.
I thought that maybe there would be another refusal of this Hypnosil, and then Nancy would maybe sneak them her prescription of it.
Okay.
It's like Chekhov's prescription because
Yeah.
we've already seen it. I feel like they just wanted Nancy to have enough pushback, but they don't want Neil to be too bad
Fair.
for what comes later.
Okay.
It's like, we still want you to like him.
But what he just said was really bad.
But what
Yeah,
he said was
it was.
fucked.
Yeah. But that night, the camera presses in on Kincaid, who rests in the corner of the quiet room where we first found him at the beginning of the film. He sings to himself that he ain't gonna dream no more. He insists all night long he sings this song, and he ain't gonna dream no more.
Poor kid, man.
Yeah.
We then find Jennifer, who sits in a common room, watching a television mounted on the wall. Max enters the room, asking what she's doing, and she answers without looking away from her program that she's watching TV. Max encourages her to read a book instead, commenting that she watches too much damn TV, but Jennifer insists that it's research. Max remembers her big plans to become a TV star, and Jennifer just tells him to wait and see. But Max gets real, reminding her that if Sims catches her here after lights out, she's going to chew him out. But when he walks over to the television to shut it off, Jennifer pleads with him not to, telling him that she needs to stay up and confessing that she can't handle the nightmares. Not tonight. Not after Philip. Max relents, but only on one condition. As far as anyone knows, he never saw her here. Jennifer thanks him for his discretion, and Max leaves her alone with her research.
Finally, a bit of kindness
Yeah.
from the staff.
But out in the hall, however, Lorenzo waits outside the showers, twirling his keys and smoking his cigarette. Taryn exits, drying her hair, and Lorenzo joins her jovially, boasting that he's got good news. Taryn finds that dubious, considering that it's coming from him. It can't be good news. But he stops her, leaning in close to tell her that he's pulling night duty, and brandishing the keys, remarks that he's got the keys to heaven, the dispensary. He explains that he's talking a clean pharmaceutical high, a night at Club Meth. Taryn just scoffs a nervous smile, telling him that she doesn't do that shit, but Lorenzo seizes her arms, rolling up her sleeve and sarcastically asking, "What are those? Beauty marks?" Taryn wrenches her arm away, replying that the marks on her arms are ancient history. Lorenzo just smokes his cigarette, offering Taryn that if she's ever in the mood for a history lesson, he's her teacher. Taryn warns him to stay away from her or she'll go straight to Max, but Lorenzo levels with her, asking who would take the word of a crazy junkie chick like her. Taryn just screams for him to fuck off before storming away, leaving Lorenzo alone to laugh sardonically.
I am seething with rage.
Yeah?
This man is more evil than Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Arguably.
Yeah.
I could not believe anything that I was hearing. What the fuck are you doing? And aren't these all like fucking teenagers on
Yes.
top of everything else?
Yeah.
They are.
I wanted to punch the TV.
I the same thing. I again. So Max is cool. Neil, we're still
Neil's on the line.
Yeah, Neil, we're still kind of like, all right.
Mm-hmm.
This dude and Sims, like, if this is what the rest of the staff acts like, oh, dude, what? These kids don't have a chance.
No.
I honestly just want this whole place to be investigated.
Yeah.
I really can't believe my eyes.
Yeah.
And I'm worried about this Dr. Carver who's ahead of everybody.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. He was great at Nip Tuck, though.
That was the Carver.
That's right.
and he wasn't.
He wasn't that great. Best season.
Best season.
Yeah.
Okay. As long as we can all agree. on
Yeah.
something.
Is season 3 of Nip Tuck horror?
Yes.
All right. But back in the common room, in an attempt to fight sleep, Jennifer snags a cigarette from the ashtray on the coffee table in front of her, placing it into her mouth and lighting it with a matchbook that she apparently keeps in her sock.
Mm-hmm.
But after taking a few puffs from it, she hovers the smoldering end of it over the back of her hand, pressing it down with a sizzle. Now we understand what she was saying earlier.
Yeah. But I mean, I feel like there's got to be a better way to stay awake.
One would think.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess if they're really trying to stay awake and they don't give them much, I mean, don't do that. But I mean...
And I'm sorry, again, what the fuck is going on at this hospital that Neil knows about this? But he's like, yeah, the 15-year-old or whatever can
Yeah.
smoke.
Smoke up.
Yeah. What is going on?
Yeah. I don't...
Because she literally named the different...
Yeah. And he's like, get out of here, scam.
Yeah. He like tousled her hair and
I'm going to
sent
watch
her
you
off.
on TV one day.
It's unbelievable. But now, much more alert, she switches the station on the television, eventually settling on the Dick Cavett show. On screen, she sees Dick Cavett sitting on a couch, interviewing his guest, Zsa Zsa Gabor, both of them as themselves in cameo roles. After cracking a few jokes about Zsa Zsa's extravagant ensemble, Cavett asks her how she got her start in show business. She shares that she didn't go to acting school in the beginning and actually got started on a talk show, but when asked, she advises young actors to study, work, and then maybe you can make it in show business. Jennifer, who should be taking notes, nods off intermittently, doing her best to stay awake.
That's what I'm saying. As damaging as the cigarette thing is, it doesn't even fucking work.
No.
So maybe we should move on.
Yeah.
And why isn't any, I mean, I feel like they are all looking out for each other in their own way, the kids.
Yeah.
Why is nobody here with her?
I think it's more just those two boys are looking out for each other. Everybody else is like, have a nice stroll, bitch. And he goes back to bed.
That's true. But Cavett then inquires if he can ask Zsa Zsa a question, which she welcomes. With a snarl, his voice growing gravelly, he asks, "Who gives a fuck what you think?" The camera returns to Cavett, who has turned full Kruger, rising from the couch and raising his bladed glove to the actress before the broadcast gives way to static.
This was a turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I saw a thing with Dick Cavett saying that he was allowed to pick whoever he wanted to be his guest right here. And look, I don't know. I know this woman on site, Zsa Zsa Gabor. I'm not familiar with her reputation, but Dick Cavett said that he picked her for a few reasons, because he would never actually have her on his show ever.
Wow.
Because she was the dumbest person he'd ever met, and that he would love to see Freddy Krueger kill her.
Jesus, dude.
And
Wow.
yeah, I was like, what the fuck? And then completely separately, I'm, messing around online, and I find a little excerpt from Robert Englund's book. And he said Zsa Zsa Gabor was probably just excited that somebody finally called her, which is why she agreed to do this. And she didn't even bother to read the fucking script because she was actually surprised when Freddie got her. So I'm like, what did this woman do to these people? Or like, what is the reputation? I don't know. But all that I read about her, they were talking shit about her.
Well, I don't know how you don't know that Freddie's gonna.
I mean, she's like, am I gonna be the final girl?
I do love that it just took the one nod and that was it.
That's all it takes.
Yeah.
I will say I did see in the screenplay, at least the one that Darabont and Russell wrote, it wasn't Zsa Zsa Gabor. The scene's in there, but it was the actress Sally Kellerman from MASH.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Cavett's like,
I know,
no, I
man.
hate
Yeah.
you.
It's like, I love Sally Kellerman. We can't let this happen.
It's just so weird.
Yeah.
That's
It's so bizarre.
very strange. But Jennifer attempts to change the channel with the remote to no avail before slowly reaching her feet and inching her way over to the television. Freddy's familiar nursery rhyme echoes and warbles beneath the static of the television, accompanied by the sound of screams as Jennifer reaches the TV, attempting to turn the dial manually. At no point is she suspicious or fearful. She's just like, I don't want to watch this anymore. That's not...
Shit was getting so crazy. I literally it's like, well, yeah, go turn it off.
Yeah.
But when this doesn't work, Jennifer strikes the television, and suddenly, mechanical arms burst out of either side of the TV, sparks shooting out, with one of the arms wearing Freddy's bladed glove at the end of it. They reach for Jennifer, seizing her by the shoulders and lifting her up towards the screen. The antenna at the top of the television rises as its base stretches translucent over Freddy's face, the thin film tightening over his features as he faces Jennifer. He tells her, "This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV." The antennas move at the top of his head like an insect as he growls, "Welcome to primetime, bitch," before slamming Jennifer's face through the glass of the television screen. At the sound of Jennifer's stifled scream, Max rushes in and he finds her there, hanging lifelessly, her head lodged in the center of the smoking television.
Honestly, the moment I was waiting for the entire film. I read a few. First of all, I love it. This is Freddy at his most. I feel like Kill Bill at my most masochistic. At his most, like, this is peak. This is Freddy.
This is a line that was apparently improvised by Robert Englund.
I did read that, which, again, it shows, and we talked about it, I'm sure, in Freddy's Revenge.
Yeah.
But when a person really embodies that character, and Robert Englund does.
Yeah.
You don't realize in every single Nightmare on Elm Street movie just how little there actually is of Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
I think because of the way he embodies the character, he's like a shadow hanging over the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you feel like he's there the whole time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And him coming out of the top of the TV looked fucking great.
It did.
It was so good. I did read Chuck Russell said that he had to fight production to not have Freddy in his hat on there.
Really?
Yeah, because they were like, no, he has to wear his hat.
He didn't even wear it as a snake.
No, I'm like,
oh, yeah.
we still know who that is.
Yeah.
And he had the antennas on. That's like a hat.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Who do they
It's a
think?
TV's
They're
hat.
like, who's that?
Yeah. What version of Freddy?
Like,
is
no,
it?
no, Freddy wears a hat.
No,
That's not him.
I'm lost.
There were just a couple things that I had read that I found interesting that I wanted to talk about. First, the Jennifer that Max comes in and finds hanging from the screen, they said that it was a dummy with flexible arms that they just stuck a blonde wig on. But they crafted 5 different TV sets for the transformation of this TV.
Oh, wow.
And I read in that article by Joel Fletcher that they all needed to look the same. So they all needed to be painted the exact same way. And they didn't have a ventilated booth to be spray painting these. And so they were like, oh, just go do it in the alley. And he was like, so we did it in the alley, but we're still inhaling all that.
Yeah.
He said that he felt like if it would have gone on production for much longer, that he would have also become a victim of Freddy from all the inhalants. He was like, it was bad.
Jeez.
Yeah, but they like I said, they crafted 5 of them. They made sure that they all looked the same. And then in the last one, they made a space, an opening big enough for Robert Englund and for a vacuum form cast of his face that kind of, rises up from it. It is, to me, really seamless.
Yeah.
Especially when you learn that there were 5 of these crafted. It's not like, oh, that's one stage, that's another stage. Like, it all really flows impressively well.
Yeah.
I read that portion of the sequence of him coming up through the top like that was partially inspired by Cronenberg's Videodrome.
Oh.
Okay. And I'm going to be honest, I thought it was fucking him pushing his head through some plastic.
Oh, yeah, for real.
To
Yeah.
come out of it. I was like, man, that's really cool. How do you get his head in that TV?
It's like, okay, Freddie.
Yeah.
I also read, and I thought that Reneé would probably laugh at this, but part of the design of the television, they had said that for the company who made the television, in the last portion of it, it says Kruger Vision.
Oh my God. That's brilliant.
But we then cut to a cemetery. Presumably at Jennifer's funeral, a crowd gathered around a freshly dug plot. Neil stands off in the distance, watching from behind a tree, overcome with emotion. But suddenly, a calm voice offers him a kind sentiment, telling him not to be ashamed, as this is a place for sorrow. Neil turns to find the nun standing there. Not the Conjuring nun.
Thank
The
God.
nun from earlier. He's like, oh, shit! But she asks him what faith he follows, and Neil supposes that he follows science. The nun shakes her head, calling it a sad choice, and Neil admits that there are times when it doesn't offer much comfort. He then remembers that he's encountered her before, and he learns that her name is Sister Mary Helena. He recalls that she does volunteer work at the hospital, and the nun confirms this, from time to time when she's needed. They watch as the crowd disperses from the graveside, Neil remarking that he should have been able to save them. But Sister Mary Helena replies that there's only one thing that can save them. The unquiet spirit must be laid to rest. An eerie organ in the score accompanying her words, she calls it an abomination of God and to man. But they're interrupted by Nancy, who for some reason is doing a cosplay of the good, the bad, and the ugly. I don't know what this costume is.
They were like, this is it.
Yeah. Neil excuses himself from Sister Mary Helena and walks over to Nancy. Nancy asks what he's doing up here and if he feels lucky. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Do ya?
I think that's a different movie.
They're all westerns, okay?
That's Dirty Harry, I think.
I'll be your Huckleberry.
All right.
That's also a different movie.
I don't think Dirty Harry's a western, though.
Tombstone is. So 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get back to the actual scene. Yeah.
They're about to duel or something.
I think, yes. It's a scene from Red Dead. But Nancy asks what he's doing up here, and Neil responds that he was just talking to... But when he turns around, Sister Mary Helena is nowhere to be seen. Nancy asks who he was talking to, but Neil just says that it doesn't matter. It does fucking matter.
It does, and this is the second time this woman has vanished before your eyes.
Yes. Yeah. And you're the one that's so hesitant with all of this supernatural stuff, anything that Nancy has to say.
Right.
This idea that these kids saw this dude in their dreams before they even met each other. Mm-hmm. And you are literally talking to what appears to be
very clearly
a ghost of some kind. But Nancy asks if he's ready to go, and they leave together, walking through the tombstones. Like that western.
Yeah. I was holding everything. Just trying not to say it.
Mm-hmm. But that night, at Nancy's home, Nancy and Neil share a meal by the fireplace. She clears their plates, Neil apologizing for not being very hungry. But something on the mantle of Nancy's fireplace catches Neil's eye. It's an ornate figurine in sparkling clothing, striking a pose with white makeup on her face. He compliments it, asking Nancy what it is, and she picks it up, explaining that it's her Malaysian dream doll, which is supposed to bring good dreams. As Nancy takes a seat on the couch, Neil comments that he could definitely use some of that right about now. The fire crackles, and Neil steps over to the window, gazing out of it as rain patters outside. He shares that he used to think that he could do something for the kids or make some kind of difference, but they're slipping through his fingers, every one of them. Nancy reminds him that he's doing the best that he can for them, and Neil wonders if he really is. He says that he's running out of answers. A patient sleepwalks out of a high-security ward. A girl alone in her room dies. He sits down next to Nancy, exhaling that he can't believe that this is happening and that none of this makes any sense anymore. Nancy sits up, leaning forward from her relaxed position, and tells Neil that maybe he's ready for the truth.
His mind better open up real wide, real quick.
Yeah.
Neil seems open to it, but Nancy has one condition. Neil must be willing to set aside everything he's learned and just trust her. She asks him if he can do that, and in front of Nancy and the flickering flames, Neil assures her that he can. The next morning in group therapy, Nancy and Neil sit with the remaining teenagers, Neil reminding the group that it is straight talk only in this room. Taryn asks if this is a group session, and Neil answers that it is, unofficially. Will worries that soon enough there won't be enough of them left to call it a group, but Neil interrupts, asking them to listen up because Nancy has something to say. Without hesitation, Nancy shares that she knows who's trying to kill them. Kincaid, sensing condescension, tells Nancy not to humor them because they're not in the mood, but Nancy continues. He wears a dirty brown hat. He's horribly burned. He has razors on his right hand. Everyone suddenly perks up, their cynicism washed away by Nancy's revelations. I will say this is almost word for word a line that appears in Freddy vs. Jason.
Okay.
And it was a line that I never liked. The protagonist, that she starts having the nightmares about Freddy, and they're like, well, what does he look like? And she's like, he has a brown hat. I'm like,
That's where
What?
you started?
Yeah.
but it's the same thing that Nancy does here.
Yeah.
Okay, then that's cool.
Yeah. Taryn nervously asks who he is, and Nancy tells the group that his name is Freddy Krueger, and that he was a child murderer before he died, and after he died, he became something worse. The score grows ominously as the camera presses in, and Nancy reveals that 6 years ago, Freddy killed her friends, and he almost killed her. Will asks why Freddy is after them, and Taryn wonders what they could have done. But Nancy explains that it's not what they did. It's what their parents did. What her parents did. They burned Freddy alive, and now they're paying for the sins of their parents. She tells the group that they're the last of the Elm Street children.
What?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool, right?
It is cool, but I'm like, do their ages track?
Well, they could have been any age, dude.
I mean, aren't they all like quite a bit younger than Nancy?
Yeah.
Well, Nancy's age is never revealed.
You're like, I like this,
Yeah,
damn it.
But she's a doctor now.
Here's all I will say. If she was maybe like 16, 17 in the film, she's only like 22, 23 now. They could have been in middle school while she was in high school.
I guess.
Yeah.
I'm defending the shit out of this. I just like that line a lot. You're the last of the Elm Street
No,
children.
that's good.
It is
That's good.
cool. But, and again, he's a child murderer. That's
Murderer.
it.
Murderer.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
But bewildered, Will calls the whole thing crazy, stating that his parents never said anything about that, which is really funny.
My mom would have told me if she killed someone.
Taryn scoffs sarcastically, imagining a world where that would be something a parent would ever tell their child, mocking, "Good night, say your prayers, and oh, by the way, your father and I torched some maniac last night."
I mean, that's how you tell them, yes.
Yeah.
But Kincaid asks Nancy what they're supposed to do, and Nancy shares that Kristen is the key because she has a very special gift. Kristen counters that she hasn't been able to use her gift since she was a little girl, but Nancy reminds her that she just did that the other night.
Yeah.
Mine was you literally just did.
And we talked about it in the office.
Yeah.
But Kristen feels that this was a different circumstance. But Nancy emphatically states that you never lose a gift like that. You only forget how exactly to use it. She sweetly asks Kristen if she'll just give it a try, and Kristen agrees to.
So this kind of got me thinking, and it just popped in my head. So does Kristen have some shine?
Oh.
Maybe.
Maybe. And Nancy does too.
Oh, okay.
Mm?
Everybody has a very...
Crossover.
Yeah. But Nancy turns her attention to the rest of the group, telling them that they all have inner strength, some special power they've had in their most wonderful dreams, and together they can learn to use this power if they try. They all have varied shine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Neil chuckles that she sounds like Peter Pan, and Nancy reminds him of his promise to keep an open mind. Neil recants, ready to be a part of this experiment. He asks Taryn to pull the shades down in the room, sharing with the teenagers that they're going to try a little group hypnosis. Taryn does as told, and then rejoins the group with the room dipped to darkness. Neil directs their attention to a pendulum resting on a nearby table under the light of a lamp.
It's just the strobe light from Exorcist 2.
Hey, honestly, I enjoyed this better
me
than
too.
Oh.
the Exorcist 2 thing.
No, I
Yeah.
liked this a lot.
Because this actually is something that is real.
I was like, fuck, am I fucking
Yeah, oh my God. I didn't agree to any of this. But he holds the pendulum to one side, letting it go to begin its rhythmic sway. He urges the teens to watch it with their eyes, to tune out everything else. He tells them that nothing else exists, only the pendulum. Kristen stares at it intently, and Nancy implores her to take everyone there. Neil instructs them all to breathe deeply and relax. They all follow his instruction as he guides them to relaxation from their toes up to every muscle in their body. The camera pans around the group as Neil suggests that nothing would be better right now than a nice, long, deep sleep. He begins to count backwards from 5, the pendulum thudding rhythmically as it reaches each side. Bells begin to chime as he states that when he reaches the end, they will all be asleep. He whispers, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the kids and Nancy all close their eyes, seemingly resting in the arms of sleep. But after only a moment, they stir and begin to open their eyes. They look over at Kristen, who offers a soft apology. Nancy suggests that they'll just try again, and Neil calls for everyone to take a 5-minute break, moving the pendulum aside. But everyone rises from their chairs, milling about as Nancy walks over to Neil. He admits to her that he was willing to go through with this for the kids' peace of mind and hers, but he tells her that she's going to have to face reality. As the kids chatter with each other, Joey goes to take a drink from a nearby water fountain, but through the door, he peeks out into the hall where he finds Marcy pushing a cart of cleaned and folded towels. She looks up at Joey, motioning for him to follow her, and he does. He traces her steps into a long, empty hallway, watching as she wheels her cart to a stop next to an opened door. She turns to smile at him, urging him to follow her inside as she enters the room. Joey wastes no time, rushing down the hall to enter the room right after Marcy. He finds her inside, smiling at her, and she shares that she just wanted to get him alone for a second. She closes the door behind him, admitting that she really likes him, and asks if he likes her. She walks him over to the bed on the other side of the room, sitting him down and explaining that she knows it sounds crazy, but she makes up excuses to come into the ward every day just to see him. She gushes that Joey is so cute. But back in the group therapy room, everyone has returned to their seats, Neil occupying himself with a Newton's cradle pendulum. Nancy suggests that they just try it together one more time, offering that if it doesn't work, she promises that she'll... But Neil looks dismayed to give up playing with the pendulum until he raises the ball one more time, and when it collides with the others, all of the balls float away from their strings as whimsical music sounds in the score. Will understands. They're here. Taryn asks where that is, and Kristen answers, we're in the dream. Neil is confused, assuming that they're all still here together in group. But with a smile, Will rises from his wheelchair, standing on his own 2 feet, sharing that in his dreams, he can walk.
It did make me laugh that Neil is supposed to be hypnotizing all of them and he fell asleep too.
That's true. That is true, yeah.
Well, was he not supposed to be in there with them?
I don't know.
I figured that he, would, but that is true. How did he?
I thought this was for them. So the fact that he's like, damn, this because he was counting them
Yeah.
He poisoned himself.
He did.
in. He did.
I thought in retrospect, the moment whenever it seems like the hypnosis doesn't work, and then they kind of just sit up and they're like, let's take 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
It is so reminiscent of that moment in Insidious.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
When Elise is trying to hypnotize Josh.
Yeah.
That's the second Juan Winnell.
That's
said,
true.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And he like pantomimes his frustration.
Yeah. It's like, I don't even know what I'm doing. And he's like, oh my God, this is my body.
Oh, that's me.
It felt like that. But Will continues. He says that his legs are strong, and also, in his dreams, he is the wizard master. He catches one of the floating pendulum balls in his hand, and he closes his fingers around it. With a wave of his other hand and a sizzling green electrical spark, he opens his palm, having transformed the ball into a butterfly that flutters away. Nancy smiles at the sight of it, as does Kincaid, and Nancy urges Kristen to try something, asking her what she can do in her dreams. Before we get to what Kristen can do, in her dreams, I just want to say, isn't bringing people into your dreams the power enough?
Yeah.
Nancy's like, what else can you do? If that's not enough,
I didn't think about it. Yeah.
Kristen, go again.
I have to have 2 powers? I was like, really? But Kristen moves a few of the chairs out of the way, and after a running start, she performs a cartwheel and transitions into a backflip in slow motion, smiling widely when she lands it perfectly to the applause of everyone in the room.
That's it?
Yeah.
Like that.
For all we know, she took gymnastics in real life.
Yeah.
That's not a dream power.
And I'm sorry, but Fergie's doing that at 9 a.m. on the morning show. I mean, that's...
And she's doing it, but it's
she's
hurting.
trying.
It's hurting her as much as it's...
It's not as effortless.
No. But Neil appears more amazed by this backflip than anything he's seen so far, as Will simulates the crowd going wild and giving Kristen a perfect score. Kincaid urges everyone to watch what he can do in his dreams, and he lifts a chair, flipping it upside down and twisting the legs with ease. Although the squeaks of the movement really seem to annoy Neil, he goes, "That's very unnerving."
Yeah.
Why?
I laughed out loud. I'm like, if y'all don't let Kincaid live his fucking life, that boy turned a ball into a butterfly.
Yeah.
This is too much.
He's like, "Oh, sit down." No, none of that.
It's solitary for you.
Yeah.
That is funny. Why?
Leave him alone.
But they then direct their attention to Taryn, who stands before them clad in studded leather and her hair styled in a massive mohawk. She shares that in her dreams, she's beautiful. She then flicks open 2 switchblades in her hands, adding, "and bad."
Me too, girl.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, I'm following Taryn.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This moment was iconic, and I love a reverse Breakfast Club moment
Uh-huh.
that we got.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
Right. If we split up, I'm going with
I'm
Taryn.
going with Taryn.
Yeah.
I call Taryn.
I did see in that Never Sleep Again documentary that the idea of the mohawk was Jennifer Rubin's.
Love
Okay.
it.
And Chuck Russell was like, "Yeah, sure." But back in the patient's room, Marcy stands in front of Joey, and as she removes her nurse's cap, she tells him that she could get into a lot of trouble for this.
Joey's like, in my dream, the nurses are predators. It's like, dude.
Yeah. I get it from his point of view as a teenage boy or whatever, but come on, man. You're a child.
Yes.
But she frees her hair from its tie, running her fingers through it, and adding that she knows Joey won't say anything. Will he? Joey shakes his head as Marcy caresses his face. She turns around, requesting for Joey to unzip her uniform. He does so eagerly, and it slips from her shoulders and onto the floor. She turns to face Joey in only her underwear, Joey tracing her nakedness with his eyes and nodding emphatically when she asks if he likes her body. She lowers him to the bed onto his back and climbs on top of him, and they begin to kiss deeply, their tongues intertwined. But suddenly, Joey is startled, and fear fills his eyes as Marcy's face grows into a sinister snarl. She pulls away from him, revealing a long, slithering tongue that has forced its way down Joey's throat. She tears it from his mouth, and with a roar, a series of slick tongues cinch around Joey's wrists and ankles, tying him to the bed.
He's mastered the dead tongue, but can he handle a live one? I thought about Groundskeeper Willie probably more than I should.
I mean, this is a straight
It
connection.
is.
Yes.
I gotta say, dude, that was impeccable writing.
Yes. Not into the kindergarten. No.
But Joey lies there fearfully as Marcy begins to laugh, her chuckle growing deeper and deeper until the camera arcs around the bed to reveal Freddy in all of his red and green sweatered glory as he snarls, "What's wrong, Joey? Feeling tongue-tied?"
10 out of 10 on the pun.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, maybe instead of doing flips and breaking chairs, we probably should have been realizing that Joey was gone and checking on him.
Is anybody's power realizing any of this or counting the group members?
Remembering our friends or you know.
I did see, and they had shown a few stills of the makeup that they wanted originally.
Yeah.
And it was going to be the actress who plays Marcy. Whenever he looks up at her, it's still her, and she's still topless, but it's Freddy makeup on top.
Oh.
And then they did it, and they even did the makeup, but they're like, this doesn't work.
Yeah, I was gonna say, come on, man, that kid's never gonna have a boner again.
I don't think that is the least of his worries. I think.
Well, if we get out of this, I mean,
It's like he still wants to live, I suppose. But the mattress suddenly drops from beneath Joey, tumbling into a dark pit that's opened up under the bed frame, a yawning maw of jagged rock, lined with skeletal remains, a lake of fire at its sizzling center. The mattress goes up in flames and disintegrates upon impact. The camera twists around Joey as the flames lick at his back from beneath him, and the tongues hold him helplessly and precariously above this pit of hellfire. I did see in an interview, I think it was on that Never Sleep Again documentary, but the way that they accomplish this is they have him on the bed tied to it, and behind him is just a blue screen that is showing all this stuff in post when they fix it.
Oh.
Okay.
But the thing is that he had to stay in this position for hours upon hours while they were doing it. And he actually, I think they said he passed out a few times.
I bet.
Yeah.
Because it's the human body is not supposed to do that.
It's like a torture.
Yeah.
Stance.
He compared it to a crucifixion.
I mean,
my God.
damn.
But in the group therapy room, the lights warble and explode, casting the room under the shadow of darkness. Kristen senses Freddy's presence, remarking that it's heavy in the halls of this hospital. Neil finally realizes that Joey isn't with them. He's like, what's his power?
Yeah. Joey, what do you got?
But Kristen is certain that Freddy has Joey. Neil rushes for the door to rescue him, but it's locked and doesn't budge. When he seizes the doorknob, it glows a vibrant red, the heat of it burning the palm of Neil's desperate hand. Nancy urges everyone to listen for a moment, and as the score grows tense, a wind seems to howl around them as a red light begins to flash overhead. The walls begin to shift, crackling and giving way, and Will realizes that the room is changing, and he says a little too casually, "What the heck's going on here?"
The heck do you mean?
Yeah. But the glowing red doorknob hisses as the paint on the door begins to bubble, and the walls wither, warp, and burn. The floor becomes a thick sand, and the windows shatter around them as the entire room begins to close in on them. It encircles them as they're bathed in red light.
So,
No.
making A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, 1987, technically a giallo film.
You're killing me. He can't take anymore. But not even Kincaid's super strength can stop the walls from their malicious march, his palms smoking and sizzling against the heat as he tries to push them back. But just when all appears to be lost, Nancy notices a door at the center of the wall, but before she can reach it, it opens. And on the other side, in the hallway, stands Dr. Sims. She asks, "What the heck is going on here?"
But, okay, first of all, I was wondering when this mean-ass lady was going to come back because I knew she wasn't going to be down with any of this. But what she sees when she steps
We do see, from her point of view, that the group therapy room is completely normal, just as it was when the group began their experiment. Only every single person is fast asleep in their chairs, with Joey crashed out, slumbering on the carpeted floor.
This is not a good look.
No.
At all.
Her arrival wakens everyone except for Joey, and she rushes over to him, checking his pulse. Neil stirs, and Sims announces, "Code Blue," to Neil's somber surprise. This looks like Neil just gave everyone Hypnosil. It was just like, let's see what happens.
And himself and Nancy, too.
Yeah.
It just looks like something not so chill happened.
Yes.
Yeah. But we cut to Joey resting in a hospital bed underneath a window, a tube inserted into his mouth, and his heartbeat monitor beeping like a metronome in the background. A neurosurgeon, played by Mary Brown, stands at the foot of Joey's bed with Sims and Dr. Carver, played by Paul Kent. She shares that Joey is in a deep coma and that there's nothing they can do for him. As she tends to him with an uncredited nurse, Sims and Carver walk away together, Carver calling the whole thing inexcusable. Sims agrees, asserting that the session was unauthorized and purposely conducted without her knowledge. Neil and Nancy wait for them in the hall as Neil defends that unusual steps were called for. Carver asks if that's what he should tell Joey's parents. And he also understands that Neil is prescribed a highly experimental drug. Nancy attempts to explain that Joey isn't in a coma because of hypnosil, but Carver cuts her off, remarking that her opinion is of no interest to him, and adds that according to Sims, Nancy has been creating a panic among the patients.
So she's been talking shit about me?
Oh, yeah. Neil refutes this, but Carver reminds him that in the past 4 days, they've had 2 suicides, and now Joey is in a coma. He declares that Neil's approach has failed entirely, and he relieves both he and Nancy of their duties, ordering them out of here today before storming off.
But those deaths happened before this intervention.
Yeah.
Okay, Joey, that was us.
Yeah.
My bad.
We'll take that.
That was us. Those deaths had nothing to do with this, even if you think that we're dosing them up with hypnosil or whatever. That had nothing to do with this.
Well, you can also check to see that it's not in his system when they were doing the straight talk?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Sims could not wait to throw them under the fucking bus.
Oh, yeah.
But Sims seemingly offers a sincere apology before curtly telling Neil that he brought this all on himself. Neil pleads with Sims to please just try to help the children, to listen to them in his absence. Sims promises to do just that before leaving. Nancy asks Neil what they're going to do, and Neil laments that there's nothing they can do. It's out of their hands now. But later that night, Neil carries his belongings in a cardboard box to his car in the parking lot. But as he puts the box in his trunk, a few files and photographs slip out and onto the asphalt. He kneels down to pick them up, turning one of the photographs over to find a picture of himself on the grounds of the hospital at a picnic, sitting in between Philip and Jennifer in much happier times.
Of course, it had to be just the two of them.
Of all photos, there wasn't a group. Well, I mean, you got to really focus.
I guess.
But he stares at it mournfully before scooping them up from the ground. But when he rises to his feet, he gazes up at a large window in one of the nearby buildings, and in the window, he sees the pristine white habit of Sister Mary Helena. As she watches him wordlessly, he calls out to her, slamming his trunk shut and running towards the entrance of the building. But he finds it locked. With the help of a large boulder the size of a small boulder that he finds in the grass, he smashes the lock open and lets himself inside. But the door creaks open and closes behind him. He climbs a set of stairs in the darkness, a door at the top of the tower closing as he arrives. Birds flit and flutter around him, but Neil enters the room unabated, calling out to Sister Mary Helena. He cautiously creeps through the cluttered debris until he reaches the end of the room, where the nun stands with her back to him, lighting a small candle atop an altar as she kneels in prayer. She then stands and turns to face him, whispering, "This is where it began." And I will say it does get a little rough from here.
Mm-hmm.
Neil comments that this wing has been closed for years, asking what this place is. The nun calls it purgatory, fashioned by the hands of men, twisted, lonely souls. And she explains that the worst of the criminally insane were locked away in here like animals. Neil remembers that this place was closed down in the 40s after some sort of scandal. And as the nun paces around the room, she continues that a young girl on the staff was accidentally locked in here over the holidays, and the inmates managed to keep her hidden away for days. She was sexually assaulted hundreds of times, and when they found her, she was barely alive, and with child. The nun reveals that the girl's name was Amanda Kruger, and her child. Neil whispers, "Freddie," and the nun concurs, "the bastard son of 100 maniacs." She adds that some say he was murdered, though no body was ever found, and Neil reminds her of what she mentioned before about laying Freddie to rest, and the nun gives the order that he must find Freddie's remains and bury him in hollowed ground. She walks away to exit the room as Neil struggles to understand. She warns, if your only faith is science, doctor, then it may be you that's laid to rest. She leaves the room and Neil chases after her, but when he reaches the creaking door that she left through, she's nowhere in sight.
That's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I guess if I knew about this lore, I have forgotten about it. Very dark. I wasn't expecting, because like I was like, we just got Welcome to Primetime, bitch.
Yeah.
And now you laid this shit on me? I wasn't expecting it.
It was a lot.
Yeah, the film is, in a way, kind of tonally a little bit all over the place in that way.
Yeah.
Through that, I did see an interview with Chuck Russell where he had said that he wanted something horrific that would, quote, feel dangerous to put on film.
I mean, nailed it.
Yeah.
Accomplished. I read that he added this when they were doing the rewrites that you were talking about, he and Darabont.
Mm-hmm.
The line, bastard son of 100 maniacs, Darabont told him that's either the best thing I've ever heard or the worst thing I've ever heard. And it sounds like just very concerned with how people were going to receive it.
Mm-hmm. Russell also called it a balancing act of not wanting to reveal too much of the monster, which is a lot of kind of a problem in a lot of horror films where if you know too much, it kind of takes away from things.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a certain issue with a certain remake of a certain horror classic that does exactly that. But I think that, I mean, it's a very bold choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But back inside the hospital, Nancy sits at the side of Joey's bed. The machinery and monitors emanate their mechanical sounds, and Nancy pleads with Freddy, "Let him go, you bastard." Suddenly, to Nancy's horror, slashes begin to appear on Joey's chest, each etching beginning to spell out a message. Come and get him, bitch.
The fact that the word bitch was added is hilarious.
He's really married to this term.
Yes.
And this is going to be on Joey forever. Like, that really sucks.
It's rude.
Frederick's not worried about it.
No.
Don't use me like this. But we find Nancy in the passenger seat of Neil's car, passing other vehicles under beaming street lamps as she tells them that she has to go in. She says that they don't have any other choice. Neil refuses, scolding that getting herself killed won't help the children at all, and he says that they do have another choice. Nancy understands that they do, but only if this mysterious nun is actually correct. Neil admits that he's heard weirder things this week, and Nancy concedes that whoever this nun is, she clearly knows more about Freddy Krueger than she does.
I was like, are you jealous?
I didn't think of that. But I was thinking more, Neil, you haven't heard. This is the weirdest thing you've heard all week. That you have to lay the bones to rest of a serial killer that is a part of the dream. Like, what else?
So what are you going through that we haven't seen?
Yeah.
He's like, I have a life outside of my job, you know? But Neil poses the real question. What happened to Freddy's body? Nancy elaborates on her earlier story. They burned Freddy to death in his boiler room, and then they hid his remains. Neil asks who could possibly know where his remains are hidden, and Nancy tells him that only one man knows, and it's time for him to talk. But back at the hospital reception desk, Lorenzo attempts to wrangle a screaming Kristen, who cries that the hospital can't take Nancy away from them. But Sims, who stands nearby, argues that Kristen is a sick girl, and if she wants to get better, she'll have to trust her now. But Kristen breaks away from Lorenzo, grabbing something from the desk and throwing it at Sims. It whizzes past her head, and she dodges it dramatically, but Kristen is seized and dragged away by Max and Lorenzo as Sims gives the order to sedate her and take her to the quiet room.
Now, I will be the first to admit that Kristen is not doing herself any favors by throwing things and slicing people up.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not defending that. But maybe some follow-up questions. What is wrong? Why do you need Nancy? What do you mean we're killing you? No, just throw her in the hole.
And I have to trust you, but you won't trust me?
Yeah.
You won't even listen to
No.
me. I don't like this lady.
bold statement.
Unpopular opinion alert.
But Kristen does scream wildly that Sims is killing them all, and Taryn, Will, and Kincaid make their way into the hallway to watch as Kristen is taken away before Sims orders them all back to bed. But at a dim and smoky dive bar, Nancy and Neil walk past patrons to find someone sitting alone at one of the tables inside. Nancy offers, "Hi, Daddy." And there, in his uniform and under the light of an overhead lamp, sits Donald Thompson, Nancy's father, played by John Saxon.
Woo!
Yeah.
This, again, I love that we're bringing all of this back.
Yeah.
And honestly, everything I see John Saxon in, it's a treat.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But he turns his head, clearly a little buzzed, remarking, "Well, if it isn't my little girl." He stands up to give her a hug, and we see that the patch on his shoulder reads, "Security," no longer a lieutenant with the Springwood Police Department.
Damn.
Yeah. He invites her to sit down across from him, and talking over the contents of the table, a glass of beer, a shot glass, and a pack of cigarettes, Donald asks what he did to be so lucky, telling Nancy that he thought she was trying to forget him. Nancy replies that that isn't true, and eyeing the contents on the table, tells her father that he's the one who's trying to forget. As he raises the shot glass to his lips and a wistful, bluesy guitar echoes from the jukebox, Nancy asks her father for his help. Freddy Krueger is back. Donald just scoffs, and instead of drinking his liquor, he states plainly to his daughter that Fred Krueger is dead, and he adds that Nancy has always had a little bit of trouble understanding that.
Dad,
Yeah.
you were there the last time this happened.
You saw Mom's skeleton sink into that bed. Weirdly. But Nancy leans forward, reminding her father that he knows what Freddy Krueger did, and that he's doing it again. Neil pulls up a chair, backing Nancy's story, but Donald remarks to Neil that they've never met before, and that this is none of his goddamn business. But Nancy insists that they could stop Freddy for good this time, but they need to know where his bones are hidden. Donald just laments that he's lost too much over this already, and he's through with it. But Nancy appeals that people are still dying after all this time, asking her father to stop running away from it. Donald just tells his daughter that it was nice seeing her again, and asks her that next time she doesn't stay away so long. Nancy storms off, with Neil chasing after her, and when he catches up to her, she assures him that she'll be fine, she just needs a minute. But just then, Neil checks his pager to see that he's got a message from the hospital. He rushes to a nearby payphone, putting a few coins into the slot and dialing up the hospital. That was a lot of things from a very particular time back to back.
Yeah. People are like, he
What?
did what?
But the phone rings in the hospital, and Taryn immediately picks it up, asking hopefully for Dr. Gordon. She quavers that he needs to come back right away, explaining that Kristen had a total shit attack, and that Sims doped her up and put her in the quiet room. Neil relays this message to a dismayed Nancy, and Taryn adds that Kristen can't stay awake for long. She's all alone, and Freddy's going to get her. Neil soothes her, telling her to remain calm and assuring her that help is on the way. He gets off the phone, handing Nancy his car keys and suggesting that they split up. He says Nancy should return to the hospital and he'll stay here to get Freddy's remains. Nancy expresses her doubts that Donald would reveal the truth to Neil, or that Sims would listen to her to get Kristen out of the quiet room, but Neil just tells her to be careful.
He's like, I don't care about any of that. The splitting up was a choice, I guess. I also was positive that they were going to kiss here.
Yeah.
In the screenplay, they do.
Okay.
I sensed it coming. I did read something too that Craig Wasson said that there was a kiss that they filmed, but it got cut. And he said something like, it was so hot, it must have melted the cameras.
All right. But after she leaves, Neil marches back towards Donald's table, a tracking shot following his every step through the bar. When he reaches Donald, He formally introduces himself with first and last, remarking that he's pleased to meet him. And now that they've met, Neil pushes Donald's table over, forcing him out of his chair and against the wall.
I busted out laughing because who is this man?
Yeah.
What is this turn that is just taken?
This is not the Neil we've known.
I could not stop laughing. And I'm like, is Nancy even out of the bar yet?
I don't think so. It's like, is that guy kicking my dad's ass? But he shouts that he doesn't know if Donald cares if Nancy lives or dies, but he does. Donald breaks Neil's grasp, but Neil continues that he and Donald are going on a little scavenger hunt.
It was funny to me, too, that nobody came over to address.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's like people are fighting again. This feels like that kind of establishment.
Just fully dissociated. Whatever.
But in the quiet room, Kristen struggles against the sedative, walking against the wall, dragging herself across it and begging God to keep her awake. Unbeknownst to her, Nancy is speeding as fast as she can towards the hospital to help. Neil and Donald, however, have reached their destination, a church. Neil removes Donald's keys from the ignition against Donald's annoyance, promising that he won't be long. He walks toward the entrance of the church, dumping out the remnants of a bottle of liquor found in Donald's car. But inside, the camera finds Neil through a long aisle between the pews. The room lit softly in candlelight, Neil makes his way over to a small bowl of holy water, and he fills the empty liquor bottle with the sacred liquid, screwing the cap back on before heading over to a candlelit shrine and swiping a crucifix that he finds there.
Again, I was just laughing.
Yeah.
I was like, and then the holy water starts glowing, and he's like, oh, the vampires are around us.
Still don't know how that...
We gotta move.
As he turns to rush off, a priest, played by Michael Rugas, seizes him by the shoulder, asking him what he thinks he's doing.
He was not having it.
Well, he
No.
was stealing.
He was.
Just blatantly.
I expeced more of a, excuse me, my son.
Yeah.
He's like, what the hell are you doing? It's a little much. It's a little much.
Well, his entire time in this building has been chaotic.
It has.
I
I was
understand.
almost like, did he fall asleep in the car? And that's actually Freddie. But Neil chuckles, apologizing that he really needs this, pulling out his wallet and promising to reimburse the priest. But instead of cash, he gives the priest his driver's license, telling him to keep it and that he'll be back for it before running out of the church. Nancy arrives back at the hospital, but as soon as she makes it to the proper ward, she finds Max standing in the hallway blocking her. She pleads with him that she needs to see Kristen, but Max just shakes his head and suggests that she save her breath. He shares that Sims gave him a very specific order that nobody is to see Kristen, especially Nancy.
Especially me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nancy beseeches him, pleading that Kristen needs her and that she's in danger, begging him to believe her. Max concedes that Nancy means well, but he reminds her that his kids have been dying off. And even if he didn't have the order from Sims, he wouldn't let her anywhere near Kristen.
I was shocked a minute ago, but from Max's point of view,
Yeah,
I
dude.
I get it.
Nancy sighs in understanding, but asks if she can at least say goodbye to the other kids. Max is uncertain, but after Nancy adds that it would be her last chance to do so, Max allows it, directing her to the TV room. In the TV room, Taryn paces around next to Will, while Kincaid surveys the blackness singed into the wall from Jennifer's murder. It is wild that you're letting them in here.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, super chill place for them all to be hanging out. It's too much.
Well, there's no cops here or anything. Did the hospital just clean this up?
Yeah.
Barely cleaned it up.
Well, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you do me a favor. Look, I understand what their theories are about Philip. What happened to Jennifer? She didn't do that.
No.
Yeah, there's no way.
But Nancy busts into the room, Taryn asking where she's been. But Nancy insists that there's no time for that, urging them all to come with her for their last group session. But Neil and Donald arrive at a salvage yard, the headlights of Donald's truck piercing through the night. He stops the vehicle and simply tells Neil, "In there." He says that they knew no one would find him there. He isn't even sure he could find it himself. He steps out of the vehicle to unlock the gates for Neil, who climbs over to the driver's seat. Donald guides him inside, and once in, Donald takes the passenger seat next to Neil. He tells Neil that the remains are in the heart of this place, and he advises Neil to take it slow. The camera rises above them as Neil drives forward, past towering piles of mechanical debris. But Nancy closes the door of the group therapy room as the teens take a seat around her. She reminds them that it's straight talk only in here. She snags the pendulum and sets it on the table in front of them, taking off her jacket and lamenting that she hoped they would have had more time to learn how to use these dreams. But Joey is in there now, and Kristen is going in with or without them.
Max didn't notice any of this.
Yeah.
No. Through the halls, yeah. He's like, she's taking a long time to say goodbye.
Yeah.
But Will asks if that means they're going to try to go in there after them to link up. And Nancy replies that it's now or never, but she stresses just how dangerous it is in there. She reminds them that if they die in this dream, they die for real.
We know you die in the game, you die in real life. We know.
We need to stay alive. But she insists that nobody has to go in that doesn't want to. And after silently consulting with each other, Will and Taryn announce that they're in, and Kincaid does so with a flourish. Let's go kick that motherfucker's ass all over Dreamland. He's a little more confident than most.
Yeah.
But they rejoice together, and Nancy reminds them that they have to stay together no matter what happens, because it's the only way that they can beat Freddy. She then switches off the lamp on the desk, raising the pendulum to begin its hypnotic swing. She directs them to clear their minds of everything, and to imagine themselves in the quiet room, the soft white walls, the total silence, only the sound of their heart beating. To picture themselves in there with Kristen. She then counts backwards from 5, and when she reaches 1, they'll all join Kristen in the quiet room. As Nancy's soft voice echoes and reaches 1, we find Kristen in the quiet room, the camera pressing in as she slinks to the ground, asleep. But the camera suddenly pulls back to reveal that she's no longer alone. Nancy kneels in front of her, surrounded by Taryn, Kincaid, and Will. I love these little shots like this.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. And it's good to see the group back together.
It is.
Yeah.
But Kristen hugs Nancy tightly, relieved to see her, and knowing that she would come. Nancy assures her that they would never let her go in alone, and Kincaid reminds her with a hug that they're a team. But the good vibes are short-lived when Kristen reveals to the group that Freddy is close. She can feel him. Nancy asks how they're supposed to find Freddy, and as if on cue, Freddy makes his presence known. Slashes suddenly appear through the padded walls of the quiet room, Freddy's bladed gloves tearing them to ribbons and blanketing the room in a rain of pristine feathers. As the group grows frenzied, Nancy reminds everyone to stay together, but we suddenly dip to white, and we find Kristen back in her bedroom, Dawkins into the fire playing loudly on her stereo as she wakes up from a short slumber.
What the hell?
I mean,
I loved this.
yeah. She sits there in front of her papier-mâché project, just as she did at the beginning of the film. Before she can make heads or tails of it, her mother enters the room, just as she did before, shutting off the stereo, worried that she'll wake the whole neighborhood. The conversation plays out exactly as it did before, Elaine wondering what her daughter is doing up at this hour. Kristen responds in a somewhat stilted manner through déjà vu, that she was waiting for her. Elaine answers as she did before, that she's home now, and urging Kristen to get into bed, complete with her signature, on delay. She pulls back the blankets for Kristen to climb in, but before she does, Kristen hugs her mother tightly. Elaine asks what that was for, and Kristen just responds that she's glad she's home. I thought this was very sad, because she's happy to see her mother, but whether it's a dream, whether it's real, Elaine
Yeah.
just does not care.
Yeah.
But as Elaine stands by the door and Kristen settles into her covers, just like before, a man calls out to Elaine off screen, asking her where she keeps the bourbon, and Elaine replies that she'll be right down. Kristen tells her mother that she had the most awful dream, but Elaine is more concerned about returning to her guest. Kristen implores that she doesn't want to be alone, but suddenly, Elaine is dragged into the hallway, and holding her by her hair in his clenched hand and dressed in a dapper suit
Yeah.
is Freddy Krueger.
I was like, at least he dressed up to take Elaine out.
He went from ashy to classic. But he raises his claw, reiterating, "I said, where's the fucking bourbon?" He slashes her forcefully as Kristen screams. He carries Elaine's severed head over to Kristen, urging her to listen to her mother. And Elaine's decapitated head reads Kristen the riot act, complaining that every time she brings a man home, Kristen spoils it. She reminds Kristen what her shrink says. She's just trying to get attention.
Too real.
Yeah.
Freddy is like, he fucking went for the jugular with that one.
How long has he been listening?
Yeah. It's like, dude, it's bad enough I thought you were going to plow my mom.
Oh,
now
all right.
you're...
Now you're plowing my feelings.
Yeah.
With a cackle, Freddy tosses Elaine's head aside before charging for Kristen. She dodges him expertly, but her pillow takes a slice, sending more feathers down upon her. Kristen evades Freddy, running up a wall and flipping backward over Freddy's head, diving through her bedroom window, crashing through the glass, and right into the second-floor window of another home.
Oh!
I love that it could not be more unnecessary.
No one asked for that.
No. Oh, yeah, the second power she has.
Yeah.
But she immediately tumbles down the stairs, crash landing at the bottom. The music follows her tensely, and when she rises to her feet, she meets the familiar foyer of 1428 Elm Street, and she immediately screams for Nancy. But dipping from a feathered white, we instead find Taryn, dressed in dreams and cast as a beautiful badass. She hears Kristen's calls and returns them, inching forward from what appears to be a dingy hallway, but she finds herself in an alley. The red neon sign of a bar is cast against her face, but when she turns around, the hallway has disappeared, and a wall is planted there instead, with graffiti reading, Taryn plus Freddy inside the drawing of a heart.
Freddy? What the fuck?
He's a fucking fool.
I don't know. There was, again, why? Covered in glitter and sweat, Taryn arms herself with her switchblades, marching forward to some fittingly badass music in the score. But she stops dead in her tracks when a man rises from behind a trash can at the other end of the alley. Hiding his face in the shadows of his clothing, he creeps his way towards Taryn, only to walk right by her. But when Taryn turns back, she comes face to face with Freddy. So that guy just lives there? Like, he didn't mean anything at all.
He was getting the fuck out of there.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
like,
I don't blame him.
Freddy Krueger? All right, you're on your
Bye.
own. But Freddy welcomes Taryn home, surveying the alley and asking if it looks familiar. With the alley bathed in red and blue, Taryn flicks her blades, announcing, "All right, asshole, let's dance." Freddy brandishes his bladed glove and the two begin to fight, Taryn immediately getting the upper hand and stabbing Freddy in the ribs. He calls timeout, basically.
I know, dude. His reaction to that fucking killed me.
Well, I'm sure it hurt.
Yeah, but
God damn it.
he collects himself and he asks Taryn why they should fight, commenting, "We're old friends, remember?" Taryn gazes at him in horror as he raises his hands, each of his fingers replaced by syringes filled with blue liquid. He tells her, "Let's get high." Taryn backs away from him in tears, but we see scars opening in her arms, yawning for the contents of Freddy's needles. Unable to get away from him, Taryn's back hits the brick wall behind her, and Freddy forcefully jabs his needles into her arms, his eyes rolling back as he fills her veins until they bulge in blue, traveling all the way up to her screaming face. Freddy quips, "What a rush." We dip to white.
Poor Karen.
Yeah.
This was beyond cruel, even for Freddie.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable.
Yes.
Yeah, he didn't have to enjoy it that much.
No, he did.
Yeah.
I read in that piece from Robert Englund's book, and I was like, this is a lot if true. That Jennifer Rubin had to stand with her arms out for 7 hours for them to do the makeup of the mouths on her arms.
Oh, wow.
But then that already is wild.
Yeah.
Then he said that they realized they put them on the wrong way. So they had to take them all off and then do another 7 hours of the prosthetics. And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Can we
That's quite a lot.
pick up tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah, no shit.
Like, God damn. I saw some work that they were going to do, and I guess that whenever he injects her, it was supposed to travel up to her head like we see,
Okay.
but her head was supposed to explode.
Oh my
Huh.
God.
They apparently just couldn't get the effect to work, and so they just cut it out completely.
Okay.
And you see it does end kind of abruptly.
Yeah.
It does end abruptly, but I think without like the conclusion of some explosion or something, we're really left to sit and think about what Freddie just did.
Yeah. That is true.
And it's fucked.
We said he is evil in this.
Yeah, that's
And he is.
Yeah. But when we return, we find translucent feathers cascading over Will, who inches his way through a dark corridor. When he hears Freddy's laughter coming from one direction, he decides to turn around and head the other way. But as soon as he does, through a beaming light, rides a massive wheelchair, complete with barbs, sharp edges, and spikes. Will turns to escape in the other direction, but silhouetted in a blue haze stands Freddy, who implores Will to have a seat, remarking that he looks tired. Will refuses, but Freddy reminds him that when he wakes up, it's back in the saddle again.
My note here was just, he's mean, dude.
Yeah.
Like, he's more cruel than
Yes.
I think he's ever been.
Yeah.
But the chair races for Will, knocking him down and running over his leg. The chair joins Freddy before whipping back for a second lap. Freddy announces, "It's the chair for you, kid." But Will retorts, "I am the wizard master." Imagine Freddy's like, what the fuck? I don't know anything about that.
What the hell are you talking about?
But when Will reiterates his wizardry, rising back to his feet in a spark of green electricity, complete with a wizard's cloak and cape, and with a burst of lightning from his fingers, he blasts the wheelchair, exploding it into pieces. Freddy stands at the distant wall, appearing quite disappointed. But Will isn't done. He announces, "In the name of Lorek, Prince of Elves, demon be gone." Huh?
Yeah.
Great. Did this make anybody else think of It a little bit? This battery acid you slime?
Honestly.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But he blasts Freddy with his green bolts, the light and electricity surrounding him as Will rushes closer. But Will gets a little too close, and he's seized by Freddy, who raises him off of his feet. Freddy facetiously apologizes, admitting that he doesn't believe in fairy tales. He stabs Will through the chest, and Will gurgles a bloody scream. Will is dead.
I know.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe. I thought that this was going to be like his thing, and then
Yeah.
Freddy, like, he goes back to regroup or whatever.
Yeah.
Nah.
And the tides change up so quickly. It's like, yeah, oh,
Yeah. The whole time I'm like, I thought we were supposed to stick together.
that.
That too. Well, yeah, they didn't really choose those feathers, though. That would kind of
Yeah.
that just happened to them.
The feathers keep him up at night.
All right. But Kristen ventures onward, calling out for Nancy, and finally reuniting with her inside of an old abandoned nursery. Before they can fully reunite, though, the painted wall in front of them begins to shake and crack. The camera presses toward it tensely, and suddenly, someone bursts a hole through it. And on the other side of the wall is Kincaid.
Hey.
He crashes through it, Kristen telling him that she could kiss him. And once reunited, Kincaid hugs them both, asking Kristen what's stopping her. And she does give him a kiss. But he asks them both where Joey is, and Kristen says that they don't know, remarking that it's like a maze in here. Kincaid suggests that it's time to stop guessing and time to start messing.
I love it.
He then antagonizes Freddy, screaming for him and calling him a burnt-face P-word. Little coarse.
Really? After all that Freddy's done? You're like,
right.
that's too
Yeah, you don't need to do that. Kincaid.
language.
Now I'm Neil. Oh, that's
In the hole, in the quiet room.
that's unsettling. But Nancy suggests they try to find the others first. But once you pop, you can't stop. And Kincaid continues his verbal assault, once again leaning pretty heavily on that P word. But when nothing happens, Kincaid comments that he knew Freddy was a chicken. But suddenly, a loud screeching noise is heard, and before them, in front of the hole in the wall, now stands a large metal door. Nancy states the obvious. It's a door.
Thank you. Yeah.
Never would have gotten to that. But when Kincaid says that it doesn't lead anywhere, Nancy assures him that it does. It slowly creaks open, orange light emanating from somewhere deep within this eerie entrance. Nancy asks Kristen and Kincaid if they're ready. Kristen nods, and Kincaid snarks, "Let's snuff the fucker." The trio steps inside, following a rickety spiral staircase downward and peering down the stair hole. We see a vibrant orange glow lighting their way.
I was like, I don't know if they're descending into Silent Hill or Shutter Island. But it's bad either way.
You don't want to go to either.
No.
I did read that this was a forced perspective shot.
Oh.
So this was not anywhere near as deep as it seems.
I love that.
Yeah.
But back at the junkyard, Neil finally parks Donald's vehicle. They get out together, Neil snagging a shovel, but Donald directs him through the piles of wreckage, telling him, that's it, the caddy. Neil inches his way forward toward the trunk of a red Cadillac with fish fin taillights as Donald lights a cigarette and leans against his front bumper. With great effort, Neil pries the trunk open with his shovel, but before he can get a good look inside, he spies Donald trying to make a break for it, climbing back into his truck.
That's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, I that's all I could think. Oh, you're really trying to burn off, dude?
Yeah.
Just going to leave him there.
He's like, I don't want to be anywhere near when this pops off.
Neil reminds Donald that he still has the keys, and Donald in turn reminds Neil that he only said that he would show him where it was, not that he'd stick around. But Neil declares that they have work to do. Donald is about to attend a funeral, one that's long overdue. But back in the nightmare, the group reaches the bottom of the staircase, walking through a door that they find there. Nancy holds Kristen's hand as they survey the massive room they just entered, cluttered with debris, much like a junkyard. The room filled with metal, piles of tricycles, skeletal remains, and a towering and burning furnace at its center.
Damn, bitch, you live like this?
This has been beneath the hospital this whole time? I did read in the production notes, this was according to the production team called Freddy Hell.
Oh, wow.
And it took 8 weeks to build.
Oof.
With as many as 30 members of the crew working at once.
Damn.
But they said that it was a pain in the ass to shoot there because it was so crowded, and the boiling temperatures of that furnace actually
Oh my
got to the cast. And this is what I was talking about at the beginning when I said that Heather Langenkamp said that this was one of the most difficult shoot.
Yeah.
Partially it was because of their time in Freddy Hell.
Oh, man.
Well, it's not called Freddy Heaven.
Yeah.
What did you expect?
But she said in Fangoria that the tensions were so high that all the anguish that you see is real.
Oh, man.
Jeez.
But the room radiates a red-orange from the fire, and the group discovers Joey, still tied to wooden posts by tongues, hanging precariously over a pit of flames. I love that the bed is gone, but they're like, the tongues are still doing it.
Yeah.
That's still what's happening. But suddenly, the blades of Freddy's gloves screech against the metal of the furnace. He makes his presence known with a sinister laugh, casting an old doll aside that he holds dangling by its leg. He kneels down to Joey, the tongues wriggling at his extremities, urging him to look, telling him that all the piggies have come home. Nancy orders Freddy to let Joey go, and he backs away gleefully, telling her that her wish is his command.
No.
He begins untying the tongues with a flick of the wrist, and Nancy rushes down to save Joey before he falls into the pit. She climbs down a large, loose pipe, and Kincaid holds it in place with his strength for Nancy to get down safely. As soon as she does, Joey is down to one wrist, which Freddy releases. He rushes towards Nancy, but is stopped in his tracks by a somersault dropkick at the feet of Kristen. Nancy holds on to Joey's arm, struggling to keep him in her grasp, but Freddy kips up, and Kristen continues her aerial evasion and assault with a few more flips. Kincaid rushes down, seizing Nancy by her belt and raising both her and Joey out of the pit of hell. After Freddy slaps Kristen to the ground, Kincaid breaks a pipe loose from the wall and beats the shit out of Freddy with it. He takes it like a champion, however, batting the pipe away and clutching Kincaid by the throat. With Freddy preoccupied, Nancy seizes her opportunity, grabbing a metal fire poker and stabbing it through Freddy's torso. Freddy grimaces in pain for a moment before cackling a menacing laugh and pulling the offending object out of his midsection inch by inch. Once it's removed, he licks the sharp edge of it, tasting his own blood.
That was insult to injury.
Yeah.
It's like my favorite flavor. What do you think?
And I know we are laughing about Kristen doing the flipping and whatever, but it is cool to see them actually using their powers in the dream.
True.
Yeah.
And you see how the team works so well together.
Yeah, because she did when she jumped on the pipe. It was a little wobbly. Kincaid immediately went over there and grabbed it, and she was able to get down.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, you guys are working together. And it's not just like, I can't do flips. You do it once and then never for the rest of the dream.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why did you introduce that if we're not going to...
So would you say that their teamwork made this dream work?
Oh, wow. I mean that a good wow.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
I was just very impressed. But Nancy frets that Freddy has never been this strong before. But Freddy just snickers, casting the poker aside and agreeing with Nancy, growling that the souls of children have made him stronger.
Him agreeing is hilarious.
It's like, you're right about that.
I have never been this strong before.
I'm glad you noticed. He tears his sweater open, revealing that weaved throughout his burned flesh of his chest and stomach are the tortured faces of his many victims, their faces anguished and agonized. As their screams reverberate through the boiler room, Freddy assures them that there's always room for more.
I feel like that chest piece is iconic.
Yeah.
I did see them talking about it, and basically it was just a 3-inch piece that just fit against Robert Englund's chest. And there were wires behind it where they could control the movements of the eyes and the mouths, and I mean it's great, and it is striking.
It's pretty wild. This film is just filled with so many visuals that just stick with you.
Yeah.
Because that is really cool.
Yeah. But in the junkyard, Neil and Donald have removed Freddy's remains from the back of the Cadillac, tossing it to the ground. As they begin to dig a hole in the earth with their shovels, Freddy begins to sense their actions in the nightmare world. He gazes upward before dropping Kincaid and completely disappearing. I was like, really? But as Neil and Donald continue digging, a nearby sound disturbs their deeds. Neil guesses that someone else is here, but Donald assures him that they're alone. Just then, the sound of a sputtering engine is heard, and the entire graveyard of cars around them suddenly spring to life bit by bit. Flickering headlights, honking horns, belching smoke from antique engines, whirring fans, whipping wipers, and rotating tires. Donald makes a break for it, but a tower of cars collapses in front of him, preventing his exit. He turns back to Neil, ordering him to bury the fucking thing. Neil urgently reaches for the bag of bones, but as soon as he does, it begins to shiver. And suddenly, Freddy's full reformed skeleton lurches up out of the bag to the sheer terror of Neil and Donald. I said reformed, I mean like reformed, like not like he's,
Yeah.
he's thinking better. Yeah. I did read in an interview with Chesney, he says that it took a whole day to stack these cars because of the forklifts they were using. They could only do a couple at a time.
Oh, man.
Okay.
And so after they did that, they're crawling inside of these cars trying to figure out which one of them actually has mechanisms that can work for this scene.
Yeah.
And he said that it was just such a difficult process because of how they were so limited on the height of the piles of cars since they could only stack so many. So they had to shoot it in such a way that made it appear larger, and I think it works.
Yeah, it does.
And that is very funny to think of Freddy coming back as just a skeleton.
I loved Skeleton Freddy,
Yes.
and again, it made me think, how are you going to get him? Skeleton power? It always comes back to whatever is being spoofed by The Simpsons.
Yeah.
In all honesty, we saw it first
We
there. The withered bones swipe at Neil, Donald watching in stunned surprise, muttering, "It's really you." Freddy's skull nods. But Donald proclaims, "I killed you once, you son of a bitch." This is the second film I've written a script for where somebody has said this.
That's true.
Just happened in Night of the Creeps.
That's so funny.
But he begins to fight with Freddy's skeleton, but Freddy dodges Donald's wild swings effortlessly before seizing him and lifting him up, throwing him towards the tower of twisted metal, impaling him on the fish fin taillight of the Cadillac, killing him. Freddy's skeleton resumes his fight with Neil, gaining the upper hand with a slash to his chest, stealing Neil's shovel and bashing him roundly with it. Neil falls into the grave that he dug for Freddy's remains, but Freddy remains up top, shoveling dirt onto Neil's unconscious body. He roars triumphantly, pumping his arms over his head, which I found quite humorous, before collapsing back into the bag of bones.
This was great.
It was. I read that this was an homage to Ray Harryhausen, Jason and the Argonauts.
Okay.
And there was apparently so much difficulty filming it. John Saxon was talking about being there until like 3 a.m.
Damn.
And he says, and I didn't particularly care for it much.
Fair, man.
Yeah.
All this made me think about was the skeletons fighting an army of darkness.
That's
Yes.
exactly
Yeah.
what I thought.
And when we're talking about Shostrom and everybody that worked on Evil Dead as well,
Yeah.
you might see the connection there too. But back in the nightmare, the group finds themselves in a hall of mirrors, the walls trimmed in red. Kincaid asks Kristen if she can pull them out of the dream, but Kristen reminds him that she's been sedated and they're stuck in here. When a door closes behind them, Kincaid and Joey attempt to pry a large mirror off the wall in search of a way out, but Freddy appears inside of it. He apologizes for keeping them waiting, and he facetiously comments, "If only there was more of me to spread around." And with a wave of his hands, numerous Freddys appear through the hall of mirrors, cackling wildly in various angles and poses. Joey sinks to the floor, watching as the myriad mirror monsters lurch out, seizing his friends and pulling them through the glass against their struggles. Once they're all pulled through these portals, Joey rises to his feet, bellowing an emphatic and forceful, "No!" Suddenly, the mirrors around him shatter, and his friends are returned to him in a sea of broken glass. I did read in that interview with Chesney that this was all tempered glass,
Okay.
but there was some real glass mixed in with it, and so
Oh.
it's
Oh.
a little frightening. But he said that there was a slingshot mechanism that was tied to strike the inside of all of these mirrors at once, and so all he had to do was push a button, and when they shattered, all of the stunt actors fall through. And he said that they had enough material to do this more than once, but they did it on their first try.
Nice.
Very nice.
But in disbelief, Joey asks, "Did I say that?" And Kincaid hugs him, telling him that he's found his dream power. Nancy checks in on everyone, but surveying the room, she realizes Freddy's gone. It's over. She hugs the trio of teens, but a voice in an adjacent room suddenly calls her name, and through glittering gold, Donald emerges, appearing in front of her. She makes her way over to him slowly, asking in incredulity, "Daddy?" I will say, this is a very, very good parallel from what Kristen said earlier about bringing her father into her nightmares, and then it was just a dream.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Dawn explains, "I've crossed over, princess." Nancy somberly echoes his words. Crossed over? But Donald says that he couldn't go without telling her how sorry he is for all the things that he's done. Heartwarming music fills the score as Donald promises that he loves her, that he'll always love her. Nancy repeats that she'll always love him too, wrapping her arms around him in an embrace. But this serene scene is destroyed as the blades of Freddy's glove pierce through Nancy's stomach. Betrayed in the embrace that she thought was her father's, Freddy twists his blades, growling, "Die!" as Nancy screams. I was fucking pissed.
Me too. I was very caught off guard. But I will say the whole time that she's having this moment with her father, I'm like, what's the catch?
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, there was really no evidence for her to say, "Freddy's gone, guys."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you should know better than anyone.
Yeah.
I will say. I think the thing, and I read that it was always the intention of Nancy to die in this film, even when it was Wes Craven's script.
Okay.
And so I understand, and honestly, that's another reason why I felt like it was such a bookend to this little trilogy,
Yeah.
this franchise, possibly if they wanted it to be.
Yeah. But we didn't really think it was going to be that easy.
Yeah, definitely not.
We hoped. We dreamed. But we cut to Neil, whose eyes open in the pit of dirt, with only one name on his lips. Nancy. But Freddy isn't finished in the dream world. He tosses Nancy's body aside, slamming the door shut behind Kristen, separating her from Kincaid and Joey as he seizes her, taking her to the ground and telling her, "You're mine now, piggy." A lot of pig stuff going on there.
Yeah.
As you said that, I was like, what is that about?
But Nancy rises with her last bit of strength, clutching Freddy's bladed hand and stabbing it into his own stomach. Neil, however, climbs out of his would-be grave, replacing his body with Freddy's remains. A heartbeat thumping in the score, he cracks open the bottle of holy water, reciting, "Please, God, for the children, for Nancy, ashes to ashes, dust to dust." He splashes the remains with the holy liquid. In the dream world, several tears of light begin to glow from holes created in Freddy's torso. He screams, writhing in smoke, twirling violently as Neil brings the crucifix to the remains, begging to lay the spirit to rest. A golden crucifix splits in Freddy's forehead as he continues to spin, collapsing into a ball of light, disappearing, seemingly defeated. Kristen watches it all, cradling a dying Nancy in her arms, sobbing as she slips away. Kincaid and Joey break through the door as Kristen promises Nancy that she won't let her die, and that she's going to dream her into a beautiful dream forever and ever. She kisses Nancy's face, collapsing against her in tears and clinging to her body. It's very sad.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. Listening to her sob, and I was like, "Damn, you did a really good job."
Yes.
Like I was like, "Are you really crying?"
I know. And with what she said, and you think about Nancy's arc as a character from the first film.
Yeah,
Finally a beautiful dream.
Yeah.
It's like all the hypnosil, all the everything. Like,
yeah,
it's very sad.
It is.
And Nancy is a goddamn hero.
Yeah.
But we cut to some time later. In the light of day, a crowd is gathered in the cemetery for Nancy's funeral. Kristen, Joey, and Kincaid stand there with Neil, who is battered and bruised, but alive, with his arm in a sling. A priest, played by Jack Shea, gives his eulogy, and after quoting the Bible, he offers that even though they entrust Nancy to the earth, her courage and spirit shall remain with them, for the Lord God has comforted them, saying that whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for his sake will find it. As he continues, Neil notices Sister Mary Helena off in the distance, walking through the headstones. He rushes over to her, but when he rounds the corner of a large slab of stone, She's nowhere to be found. But what he finds instead is a grave marker, and he mutters, "Oh my God." The inscription on the headstone reads, "Amanda Kruger, her name in Christ, Sister Mary Helena." He gasps a breath and exhales in shock. You were his mother.
Come to think about it, his name was, it was you.
Damn. I have to admit, this moment is not played as big as it should be.
No.
Because that's his reaction. He's like, damn,
Oh,
dude.
wow. And that's it.
It's like, I've been chasing a ghost this whole movie. Well, science. That's like, what?
And you should have known you were chasing a ghost this whole movie.
Yeah,
When
well, she kept
he
vanishing.
should've.
yeah, she's not Batman.
Yeah. Every time he went around the corner, there was none there.
All right.
Nah.
No.
Yeah.
No, we can't allow this. But that night, Neil rests in his bed, fast asleep as a calm lullaby sounds in the score. The camera travels from his sleeping face to Nancy's Malaysian sleep doll, which stands guard of his dreams on his nightstand. But resting next to the doll is Kristen's completed project, the house at 1428 Elm Street. With an eerie hiss of a musical sting, one of the lights in the windows of the model house suddenly switches on. Nightmare on Elm Street 4. I will say before I ask the customary question, this film ends with Dawkins' song, Dream Warriors.
Yeah.
It is fantastic. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I did read that this song actually went platinum.
Whoa.
Really?
Yeah, and a lot of people in that documentary said that the fact that Freddy Krueger appears in this music video that was on heavy rotation helped a lot with Freddy becoming more of a pop culture icon.
Okay.
I can see that.
Yeah.
One thing as well, after I had finished my script, I wanted to look at some of the things in the screenplay. And I looked and I saw at the end that there is a scene where Kristen and Neil have a scene together
Yeah.
before he goes to sleep. And because there's that kiss between him and Nancy that's in the screenplay that doesn't end up in the film, he tells her that he sees Nancy in his dreams and that he's going to go see her right now.
Oh.
And so it ends on this kind of a note where he still, I guess, of course, is harboring these feelings for her.
Yeah.
And he's getting to experience time with her through his sleep.
Oh.
But I guess because they cut the romance out, that part doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah. But I feel like the light turning on in the dollhouse after him going to bed would just be like, oh, it's
Nancy?
Freddy. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Nancy is Freddy. That's not who
Right.
he's saying.
Right. Okay.
It would, I mean, and that's a little more ambiguous too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be an interesting way to go.
Yeah.
But I will ask the customary question. What did you guys think of A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors?
I really enjoyed this. This was I don't think interesting is the right word for it. It's very fun. I think it's just very, very fun. Freddy is he's on some bullshit. You know, there's a few times and it's like, come on, dude. That's a bit much. But I think it does show a little more of the diabolical Freddy. It does give us more of a, oh no, you are a bad guy. You know, you are also scary, but you're a fucking villain. A lot of the effects that go on, the score, like everything is really, really good in the movie. There are some things that are a bit of a like, huh? But I mean, it's fucking Freddy. You know what I mean? Him being a snake, like that read a snake. I mean, it
Yeah.
read
did.
a snake. The TV thing, of course, that's iconic. Everybody knows that. Him having dude hanging from the tongues, Joey, like that looked cool. The Freddy's Hell thing or whatever, that was cool. Like there's a lot of shit that you can tell they did, and it pays off in the movie. I don't like that Nancy's gone, but I mean, you know, it happens. But yeah, this was really, really cool. I hadn't seen this in a long time, and watching it for the show, I was like, all right, I do remember a lot of this.
Yeah, I was very upset about Nancy. I don't know why. I just wasn't expecting it.
No.
But I loved her coming back. I loved John Saxon coming back. I loved these kids and the way that they were able to kind of band together and come into their own, particularly Kristen.
Yes.
Like you said, it's just a lot of fun, and it gave itself a really difficult task of having fun with some very heavy themes peppered throughout.
Yeah.
But I think that even though like tonally at times it's like, oh, like that was a turn, I think it did a decent job of kind of juggling both of those aspects. The practical effects always for the win. They were fucking fantastic. And it sounds like they went through a lot to accomplish them. It's very much appreciated. The performance is really good. Like you said, the score. I like the story. I like Nancy coming back instead of running away, coming back and standing up for these kids when nobody else is fucking listening to them. And Larry Fishburne was a treat to behold.
Yeah.
Even though after he was like, "You're not going in there," we never see his ass again. But I really, really liked this one a lot. Freddie is, like you said, he is back on his bullshit. He is punny. He's mean. He's creative. And there are really iconic kills, iconic one-liners, really great moments in this one. It was really, really good.
I agree completely. I think that is one of the biggest strengths, what you said, what they've done with Nancy's character.
Yeah.
Because she really did go from a teenager who couldn't get adults to listen to her to an adult that fucking listened to teenagers.
Yeah.
And so it's just a fantastic arc for her. This group of kids, this band of misfits that found family in each other, this idea of each of them having something special about them and it coming into play and actually mattering.
Yeah.
That's really fantastic. And there's a really good message in there if you think about it.
Yeah.
But I just really love this as a sequel. I love this as a story. I love that it has respect for what came before it, but also expands on the lore of what this is.
Yeah.
And it returns us to dreams.
Yes.
There's such interesting dream logic. There's such interesting dream sequences of things that are so relatable as people who have nightmares.
Yeah.
I just think that it's just a fantastic film, and it works so well as a sequel. It's probably one of my favorite sequels, period.
That's fair.
Okay, yeah.
And it really does. I mean, Freddy is a fucking menace. He
He's
is
terrible.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
I will say I think that this film strikes it with this balance that I appreciate.
Oh, yeah.
Where there are true moments of horror, but there are these little one-liners of Freddy just being kind of a funny little asshole.
Piece of shit.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that maybe towards the end, I don't know exactly with the franchise, but to my understanding, it starts to lean a little more towards that.
Yeah.
Where Freddy is the attraction.
Well, this felt like a moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this, to me, I feel like this is like the step towards that, but not leaping in completely.
Right.
Okay.
Because Freddy is very important in this film, but he's not really the reason to watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a very important facet of it, but it's not what takes over the whole thing.
True.
And I think that just works really well for me. But I mean, I guess we can slide right into ratings.
Yeah.
I really do enjoy this film. I really appreciate it a lot in what they tried to do here and what they accomplish. I know that I will definitely watch it again. I agree with everything you said. There are some really fantastic performances in here, some really good moments, iconic scenes that are just horror, like royalty.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of sequences, a lot of technical work, special effects, the score, the production design.
Yeah.
The way that they move some of these environments, the way that the camera unfolds as like a way to trick the audience. It's a lot of fun.
It is.
And I just think that it's a very, very well-made film and one that is definitely worth the watch.
Oh, yeah.
I love the characters. I love their dynamics. There are some things that are a little like you said,
Yeah.
where some of the writing, some of the choices made, maybe some of the characters, the way that Neil kind of flip-flops a few times.
Yeah.
And I fucking love John Saxon.
Yeah.
I appreciate the story that they're trying to tell with what happened to Donald Thompson after.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I'd like more of
Yeah.
him. Just
Especially the way that we know him.
Yeah.
Like him being the dude that's like, no, I'm not helping. I'm about to run. Oh, I can't run. Okay, I guess I'll help.
Oh no, a tail fin.
Yeah. Like,
But yeah, I really think those are my only real negatives for it. And they made some very bold choices that I think are, I mean, wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, out of 10 disturbing and deeply personal dreams, I am going to give A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors 8 disturbing and deeply personal dreams out of 10. I really, really loved this movie.
Yeah.
But I will now open the floor to you.
I think we've all expressed how much fun we had with the movie. And I'm a big, I champion Freddy a lot and Chucky, and I like the shit talking. And I think that this really gave me what I was looking for. I think, yeah, some of the choices kind of was just like, okay, but it is worth a rewatch, and it is worth watching it if you haven't seen it. And I totally agree with you, T. I will watch this again. And it's like, I feel like this is a movie, seeing again and realizing how much fun it was again, and being older and understanding everything a whole hell of a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that it's like, oh no, dude, I'll watch this tomorrow. It's like, that's fine. But yeah, everything, the cast, everything they did, like I said, it would just be repeating what you said. But man, what a hell of a fucking ride. But for me, on a scale of 1 to 10, disturbing and deeply personal dreams, I'm going to give Dream Warriors an 8.5. I really like this movie. I want to give it a 9, but I feel like there might be one more that I want to, and if not, then we'll just fix it.
Uh-huh.
But I feel very comfortable with that.
I realized in my tiredness I said an 8. I meant an 8.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, lucky for us then, because, well, I guess I should say something. I really like this too. I already said all my opinions and my thoughts, and this is definitely one that will be thrown in the rotation. And like I said at the top, I don't remember the last time I ever watched this, if I ever did watch it the whole way through, and that's kind of lame. Like I won't be doing that again. It's gonna get thrown in. So on a scale from 1 to 10 disturbing and deeply personal dreams, I also gave A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors an 8.5 out of 10. It's like you said, it's a ride. It's a blast.
It's a dream.
It's a dream.
Well, that's all from us at Pod Mortem. What would you rate A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors, and what should we watch next? Let us know on Twitter at the Pod Mortem. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and like our Stairhole Productions page on Facebook. Be sure to follow each of us on Twitter at TravisMWH, at Blood and Smoke, and at RealStreeter84. Thanks again to Original Cinematic for sponsoring this week's episode. Please consider pledging to our Patreon, where you'll gain access to bonus content, our monthly schedule, our Discord server, and the opportunity to help us decide which films to cover. Stay tuned until after the music for a special thank you to our Wendigo Getter patrons. And remember, though fear often has the power to weaken us into worriers, we must always try to summon the strength to ignite our inner warrior. Until next time. Thank you for staying tuned. We want to give a very special thank you to all of our Wendigo Getter patrons.
Woo! Yeah.
Very good. A special thank you to Chris Ontiveros, Kristen Lofton, Megan Martinez, Kimberly Bass, Sophie Hodson, Anthony Jerome M., Jordan Nash, Kent Morton, Lala Thames, Travis Anissa Hunter, Miguel Myers ATX, Jennifer Perez, Allison O'Neill, Carissa, TJ and Angie Bronson, Gabrielle Trevino, Spooky Mom, Apple and Ontiveros, Karima Rhodes, Antonio Huerta, Kimberly Kleindienst, Will Brown, Sydney Smith, Osvaldo Soto, Bobby Holmes, Donna Eason, JD Rizak, Molly Gerhart, Armand Spasto, Aaron Aguirre, Eggy, William Berry, Brittany Seaman, Charity Oxner, Amanda Six, Mandy Rainwater, Jordan Roberts, Dylan, Jordan Blevins, Liz Heath, Spencer Montalvo, Pancake the Panda, John Ramos, Michael Newting, Alexis Roberts, Dan Laveau, Itzy M, Gary Horton, Leisha Olivier, Kate Lamp, Carlos and Sydney, Jessica Hunter, Helena Rudder, Alan Johnston, Mariah, Livy Fun, Scott Troutman Wise, Towton Watson, Mozzie Bear, Brittany G, Dave Burke, Adrian Stakes, Daniel McGinnis, Nick Spill, Emma Hagel Kissinger, Valerie G, Emiliana, Brian Glass, CB, Taylor Santana, Will Lewison, Angelique, Smelly Poo Poo Head, Beth Bauer,
Cookie, Esperanza J, Jason Kyle OKC, Danielle Peralta, Brandon, Sawyer Reese Farr, Dr. Diva Loves Horror, Girl That's Scary, Cassandra, Andrea Simmons, Ashley Higuera, William and Xena Rush, Ryan Brom, Megan Ochoa, Laura Lassiter, Eileen O, Marissa E, Sydney, Henry F, Megan M, Strangely Sarah, Christy Beck, Nancy and Andy, Amanda Lopez, Andy Terrell, Jason Hanovan, Katie K, Erica Morin, Cameron S, Nicole Stewart, Tris Wynn, K.87, Mariah Jensen, Carrie A, Lonnie Lono, Powell, Kayla E, Maggie H, Murder Stina, No Thanks Tom Hanks, Kevin McGonigal, Kristen Marcy, Ori 81 Boricua, Look Like That One Girl, Bog Boy, Felnez 63, Alita Pui, Probably My Jugs, Kate Thackeray, Wade Pack, A Lizard, Bay J, Jay Rich, Jen Lassiter, Topher Williams, Elena Metler, Jean Jacket, Valerie K, Christy Lee Kruger, Professor of Humanities Laura McCarricker, Naomi, Josh Smith,
Abby Kopp, Crystal 831, Skank Sinatra, Morgan Alexander, Tony Osteen, Julie Fredborg, Rihanna S., Daniel Taylor, Anna Kate, Heather Ortiz, Jen T., Kim H., August, Vengeance Spirit, Sam J. Green, Kelly Glazyface Mac, Jenny May, Zoe Marie, Glittery Fab, Malik Caselli Armstrong, Scarly D., Toya Shea, Katie, Martin Shaw, Star, Tyler J., Daniel Dickerson, Jordan Gaddis, Cam Davies, Patrick Hoagland, Raven, King Roger, D, Wesley Tart, Kristen Jackson, Jacob Nordberg, Spencer, Samantha, Damian Grant, Half Price Horror, Clemmy, Nisi Nay, Erica, Jason X Rules, Karen Burrows, 203 Duncan, Aaron Norman, Stephen Rogers, Victoria Smith, Corey Gillen, Patricia A. Graham, Erasmo Pena, Danielle Wright, Bud Hates Mushrooms, and Tabitha Thomas. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all. We appreciate you so much, and we hope that you know that you've made our lives a dream come true.
Aww.
Yeah.
We
It's
love
true. Yeah.
Until next time.